Chapter 4:14. Among Jinshi and the others, Yugui looked panicked. "Big brother, what should we do?" Jinshi glared at him and continued to attack the stone wall. "What else can we do? Keep going." The others paused for a moment then sped up. "This won't do." Only Jinshin said, "We have to stop it, otherwise." "But what can we use to stop it?" Yongryu said anxiously, "Whether it's spells or weapons, they're useless against that monster." Jinshin's gaze fell on Emochenga with a pensive expression. "Fellow Dawish Chin, your magic weapon?" Emochenga understood what he meant, so she said, "My magic weapon isn't powerful enough, but it's good at defending. Maybe we can try." Jinshin was very satisfied with her initiative. He nodded and said nothing more. Emochenga hesitated for a moment, then reached her waist and released all 3 spiritual beasts, including Feifei, who wasn't good at attacking. "You 3 attack the restriction with all your strength." Feifei was fine, but Xiaofan and Xiaohua were released with great difficulty. They were just about to come up when they heard such an order, blinking their eyes in confusion. Emochenga said again, "Don't take it lightly. This is a matter of life and death, understand?" "Yes, master," Xiaofan answered obediently, then turned around to attack the restriction. Xiaohua, seeing that Emochenga was ignoring it, whimpered aggrievedly, then followed Xiaofan. Feifei, on the other hand, didn't say anything and started to help attack the restriction. Seeing her 3 spiritual beasts, the others widened their eyes and looked at her in surprise. 3 spiritual beasts, all of them in the 5th rank, and one of them could speak. This was really shocking. Emochenga sighed inwardly. She knew this was a bit ostentatious, so she only released 1 spiritual beast at most. Now that things had come to a head, she had no choice but to do this. If they could escape, Castellan May would definitely not let them go. Even if they were greedy, they wouldn't have a chance. Only Jinshin and Ye Wuxiang were a bit surprised. The monster's breath was getting closer and closer. Emochenga took out several magic weapons. "Fellow Dawish Chin," Jinshin shouted from behind her, "go and stop it now. It's best if you can lure that monster away. If you can't, I'll help you." "Got it." Luring them away was indeed a good idea, but it involved 2 problems. First, it was trust. If she led the others away, and they broke the restriction without informing her, she would fall behind. And then, City Lord Mei would find out that she was the unlucky one. However, with Nie Wuxiang here, she was willing to believe him this once. The second problem was whether or not the monster could be lured away. After all, there were so many people here. As long as it had some intelligence, it should be able to give up as many as it could. However, this was also uncertain. Who knew what this thing was? Perhaps it had no intelligence at all, only instincts. Emochenga tossed these thoughts to the back of her mind, then walked out of the passage with the restriction node and headed in the direction the monster came from. When Emochenga saw this monster, she was shocked. This monster's aura was surging, and it was actually much stronger than what they had seen before. Strange, those demonic cultivators who had been turned into puppets were all killed by them, so how could this monster become stronger? Could it be that there was something strange in this cave? She didn't have much time to think. The monster had already discovered her and stopped in front of her, its strange aura surging. Without hesitation, Emochenga waved the heaven and earth fan. Countless flowers, grass, and leaves flew out of it and rolled into a ball. However, they didn't roll towards the monster but fell around it and wrapped it up. Direct attack wouldn't work. This was something they had verified, and Ye Wuxiang also indirectly proved it. That being the case, they could only try not to make direct contact with it. Only in this way could they avoid spiritual aura being absorbed by it. Seeing these flowers, grass, and leaves with spiritual aura scattered around it, the monster was indeed confused. It stood in place for a while at a loss before it tried to move forward again. In its opinion, although there were countless scattered spiritual auras around it, they weren't as delicious as the cultivator in front of it. But Emochenga didn't give it this chance. As soon as it moved, the heaven and earth fan immediately waved, and the flowers and grass around it rolled up again. They still scattered around it without moving forward or backward, but they coincided with the position of the 8 trigrams, forming a simple formation. The monster paused again as if it didn't know where to go. Emochenga wasn't an expert formation master, so she couldn't be like Tianji Qin, who could instantly lay an invisible formation. Her formation could only confuse this monster, making it unable to see the spiritual aura situation in its surroundings for a while. Originally, she was worried that this monster was invisible and didn't know whether the formation would work on it or not. But after seeing its reaction, she felt a little relieved. At least, the direction in which this monster sensed spiritual aura was similar to cultivators, so this formation could also confuse it. However, after several times the monster simply stopped moving. It stayed in place for a while then floated forward along the passage. Emo Chenga was shocked. She wanted to continue laying the formation, but Feifei's voice suddenly appeared in her mind. It's useless, master. This thing is stupid but its intuition is very accurate. You can't confuse it forever. By the time it finished speaking, Feifei had already run over from behind. Emo Chenga saw it coming but didn't ask anything. She knew Feifei was very smart, so smart that it could judge the situation by itself. She said, "Do you recognize this thing?" Feifei shook its head. "Master, my memory isn't omnipotent. I just feel that this thing has the aura of the distant past." The aura of the distant past. Emo Chenga couldn't help but think of those sacrificial temples. Cultivation techniques came from stone tablets came from sacrificial temples, and sacrificial temples were born in the distant past. In that case, it wasn't strange for Feifei to feel the aura of the distant past. She didn't have time to think too much. The monster was already very close to her, so she couldn't attack it directly. A simple formation also couldn't trap it, so Emo Chenga was in a dilemma. Boom! Nie Wuxiang's heavy punch landed on the stone wall's restriction. The restriction swayed and flashed with light, but it still managed to hold on. She anxiously turned her head to look. In fact, from this angle she couldn't see the monster. However, she had a treasure on her, so she was much more sensitive to this monster's aura than others. She could clearly feel that Emo Chenga was having a hard time resisting it. "Fellow Taoist Jianxin." She turned her head and called out to Jianxin, "Fellow Taoist Qin." Jianxin was still controlling his flying sword, concentrating on attacking the restriction. Although he was only in the middle stage of the core formation realm, his cultivation level was much higher than Emo Chenga's and Nie Wuxiang's, who had just advanced to the core formation realm. Moreover, he was also a sword cultivator, so the flying sword in his hand shone brightly and was extremely powerful. After retrieving his flying sword, Jianxin swallowed a medicinal pill. He then glanced at Nie Wuxiang and said faintly, "This restriction can't hold on much longer. We have to hurry. When fellow Taoist Qin retreats here, I'll go and help her." Nie Wuxiang still wanted to say something, but in the end she swallowed her words. She didn't really trust this Jianxin, but what he said wasn't unreasonable. This restriction was already on the verge of collapse. Maybe one attack could break it, and Jianxin's attack power was the strongest among them, so it'd be best if he could stay here. However, when she thought of Emo Chenga, who was holding on by herself, she clenched her teeth and sped up her movements. Emo Chenga retreated step by step. Even with Feifei's help, she still felt powerless. She didn't know why, but this monster's aura was a lot stronger than before. When they encountered each other before, no matter how she attacked it, it would always return to its original state. This time, however, it could even counterattack. With Ren Yufeng's experience, she didn't dare to directly come into contact with these auras. Who knew what was strange about these auras? As a result, she could only be slowly pushed back by this monster. Fellow Taoist Jianxin. Seeing that she was about to be pushed back to the passage where the restriction was located, Emo Chenga clenched her teeth and shouted, "I can't hold on anymore. Please come and help me." Jianxin naturally heard her plea for help, but he still didn't stop moving his hands. He simply said, "Fellow Taoist, hold on a little longer. We're almost there." Upon hearing this answer, Emo Chenga couldn't help but feel annoyed. She said, "How can I hold on by myself?" Nie Wuxiang also turned around and said, "Fellow Taoist Jianxin, this." Jianxin was indifferent. He coldly glanced at her and said, "This is a crucial moment. I won't leave. If you go and help her, it'll be the same." Nie Wuxiang was also angry. "You said you'd help her, but now you're actually going back on your word." Jianxin's tone was indifferent. "Say whatever you want. If she dies and we can all escape, it'll be worth it." "You?" Nie Wuxiang was seething with anger. She raised her fist, almost wanting to kill Jianxin first. However, her reason reminded her that even if she killed this person now, it wouldn't help at all. She looked around. The other 5 people were all attacking in silence. No one was willing to say anything. Nie Wuxiang couldn't help but sneer. In the past day or so, the 2 of them could be said to have given these 5 people a lot of advice. However, in front of their lives they wouldn't come forward. She clenched her teeth, gave up on continuing to attack the restriction, and turned around to leave. Fellow Taoist Tiancan. At this time, Jianxin's voice came from behind her. "According to my estimation, another cup of tea's time should be enough. Just hold on." Nie Wuxiang paused for a moment. She glared at him then immediately ran towards Emo Chenga. Mo Chinga had already heard their conversation a moment ago, so she was also very angry in her heart. These past few years she encountered a lot of things, but there were only a few people like Jinshin. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. This person looked very opinionated, and he didn't seem like a person who would go back on his word. However, she didn't expect that when things came to a head, he would act like this. However, her thoughts were the same as Nie Wuxiang's. Although Jinshin had the intention of abandoning her, now wasn't the time to turn hostile. If she really persisted for another 10 minutes, she would be able to break the restriction. In that case, she could give it her all. However, the current situation wasn't optimistic, and they didn't know whether their efforts were worth it or not. Nie Wuxiang ran over and saw the monster's current appearance. She was shocked. How could it become so powerful? Mo Chinga shook her head. How could she know? Upon seeing Nie Wuxiang's extremely depressed appearance, she asked, "What's wrong?" After a long time, Nie Wuxiang finally exhaled and said helplessly, "This thing's already this powerful, I can't stop it." Mo Chinga was stunned. Among them, the one who was most familiar with this thing was Nie Wuxiang. If even she couldn't do anything, wouldn't that mean they could only let this monster swallow them all? After hesitating for a while, Nie Wuxiang's eyes revealed a resolute expression. "Since that's the case, we can only do this." Chapter 4:15. What are these brats trying to do? City Lord Mei muttered to himself as he stared at the mirror. These juniors were not ordinary core formation cultivators and needed to be more careful. However, he found it interesting to see how busy they were inside the lost cave. He couldn't help but want to see how far they could go. In any case, up until now, everything was still under his control. He already knew that they wanted to break the restriction, but he didn't think much of it. It wasn't difficult to repair a single node of the restriction. Once the restriction was broken and someone escaped from the lost cave, he would immediately capture that person and feed him to the original devil. No matter how strong a few core formation cultivators were, he didn't need to worry about them. Although the difference between core formation and nascent soul was only one level, the difference was like heaven and earth. Right now, the progress of the lost cave was still under his control. He already knew what these people were trying to do, so he naturally prepared for it. However, as he watched, one of the brats puzzled him. Rather than calling it a brat, it was actually a girl. When Elder Liang brought the two girls back to the city lord residence, he discovered this. However, this wasn't a big deal. It wasn't strange for a girl to disguise herself as a man. However, he was still a little surprised. Although these two girls had ordinary cultivations, they had quite a number of spiritual treasures on them. They did not look like ordinary cultivators. Furthermore, their performance in the disorienting cave was indeed remarkable. If it wasn't for the fact that these two cultivated Tao techniques and had nothing to do with him, he would have taken them in as disciples. But now, the girl dressed as a man was blocking his original devil, as if she wanted to do something. What could she do? Could it be that they still didn't understand their situation? All attacks that involved spiritual energy and demonic energy were useless against the original devil. Even if the original devil's aura was temporarily dispersed, it could quickly recover. They had nowhere to run inside the lost cave. Logically, City Lord Mei didn't think that the girl could do anything. However, when he thought of this, his eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. He rubbed his brows and thought to himself, is this an illusion? They were just a few core formation cultivators. With him personally watching over them, what kind of accident could happen? However, in the next moment he abruptly stood up and his face turned pale. How could this be? His reaction shocked the surrounding descending Star City core formation cultivators. Elder Liang hurriedly came forward and called out in fear, "City Lord." However, City Lord Mei didn't pay any attention to him. She snorted coldly and threw the mirror in her hand to the ground. Then she shook her sleeves and flew towards the teleportation array. In an instant, she disappeared into the teleportation array. Elder Liang was puzzled as he watched City Lord Mei disappear. Then he lowered his head to look at the mirror. When he saw the scene in the mirror, an incomparably shocked expression appeared on his face. In the mirror, Nie Wuxiang's entire body was shrouded by a black aura. This black aura was very different from devil aura, as if it had a life of its own and was surging non-stop. Just this scene alone wasn't something to be surprised about. Perhaps this Tiankin was just a demonic cultivator who had concealed himself extremely well. But what made Elder Liang incredulous was that the primal demon, which core formation cultivators like them didn't dare to approach, actually moved back in fear when it saw her. How was this possible? Elder Liang was endlessly shocked. He was the #1 confidant of the city lord. He was very clear about the process in which the city lord obtained a new cultivation technique and created the primal demon. This thing had completely surpassed the concept of demonic cultivators in this day and age. It was far more advanced than the devil aura on their bodies. Because of this, the devil aura on the city lord's body was gradually restrained. It had reached the realm where it could be released from his heart. If one didn't cultivate a special cultivation technique like the city lord, they would be swallowed the moment they got close to it, let alone control it. But what he saw in front of him clearly wasn't the case. The city lord had nurtured this primal demon for so long. If it could swallow all these core formation cultivators, it would be able to help the city lord reach the heavens in a single step. But now, it was actually being absorbed by someone else. The more Elder Liang thought about it, the more frightened he felt. Cold sweat dripped down uncontrollably. The reason why they dared to do such a thing was because they had no other choice but to swear loyalty to the city lord. It was also because this plan was meticulous. If it succeeded, they would be like dogs and chickens rising to the heavens if they followed the city lord. But now, if the primal demon was swallowed by someone else, could the city lord's plan still be realized? If the city lord couldn't advance to become a peak-level warrior, how long could Descending Star City survive? Almost all of these people were brought into the city lord's residence by him. Although there were some who didn't have any background, there were many who had strong backing. At least it involved the major sects in Eastern Tang and one of the 3 demon territories in Northern Lin Kingdom. As a nascent soul realm cultivator, the city lord might be able to give up everything and escape. But what about the core formation cultivators? Could they escape the pursuit of the major sects and the demon territories? Brother Liang, what's wrong? Seeing the city lord leave in a rage and noticing his abnormal behavior, the other elders of Descending Star City who were standing slightly further away were slightly terrified. They moved closer and asked softly. Elder Liang wiped the sweat off his face and shook his head. Nothing. He didn't dare to say anything now. It was still unknown whether or not the city lord would be able to subdue these core formation cultivators. If the city lord succeeded in the end and they escaped in advance, then the city lord wouldn't let them go. At this point, for the sake of his own life and future, he could only hope that the city lord could stop this matter and subdue all these core formation cultivators. Ignorant Junior. A shout resounded in the cave. The voice was full of anger. Next, the 8 people felt a powerful aura rushing towards them. Yong Ryu was the first to panic. This is the aura of a nascent soul realm cultivator. A nascent soul realm cultivator actually appeared here. Jianxin paused for a moment then shouted sternly, "Continue." But Yong Ryu's heart was in a mess. There's a nascent soul realm cultivator here, how could we? Pa! With a crisp sound, a strong wind hit Yong Ryu's cheek. Jianxin said angrily, "If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish right now." Senior Marshal Brother. Qiu Qingrua cried out in fear and rushed forward. Jianxin coldly glanced at her then continued to attack the restriction. That nascent soul realm cultivator's main target wasn't them. They still had a chance to live. Of course, if these 2 people couldn't accomplish anything and caused everyone to be unable to get out, he didn't mind killing them right now. When City Lord Mei's thin figure appeared in front of the 2 of them, Nie Wuxiang was already speechless. Right now, her whole body was wrapped in black aura, and the primordial devil aura in her body was extremely powerful. Even her spiritual aura was completely swallowed by the primordial devil aura. Mo Chenga couldn't tell whether she swallowed the primordial devil aura or was swallowed by the primordial devil aura. But Nie Wuxiang definitely wouldn't be able to move for a while. What should they do now? Seeing that primordial devil aura had already merged with Nie Wuxiang, City Lord Mei was so angry that she trembled. Her youthful face twisted as she glared at the 2 of them fiercely. "You 2 actually ruined my painstaking efforts." Right after she said that, she threw a punch at the stone wall, smashing it into pieces. The whole cave shook along with City Lord Mei's movements. Jianxin saw a flash of light on the restriction, and his face was filled with joy. "Hurry up. The restriction will be broken soon." City Lord Mei's angry action just now happened to give them a helping hand. Without much time to think, Mo Chenga waved the white silk handkerchief and stood in front of City Lord Mei. She then quietly put Nie Wuxiang behind her. She knew she couldn't defeat a nascent soul cultivator, but at this moment, it was impossible for her to ignore Nie Wuxiang. Nie Wuxiang trusted her. Mo Chenga clearly knew that after absorbing the primordial devil aura, she would lose her ability for a while, but she still did it. Mo Chenga didn't want to betray this kind of trust. City Lord Mei stared at the 2 of them and revealed an evil smile. "What? You still want to be my enemy?" Overestimating your capabilities. Emo Chenga was very calm. She always had this kind of ability. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer she became. Holding her magic weapon in her hand, she looked straight at City Lord Mei and said with a flat tone, "It's not that we want to be enemies with City Lord Mei, but City Lord Mei schemed against me first. Our lives are at stake, so even if our strength is inferior, we can only fight." City Lord Mei was stunned when she heard what she said. She then raised her head and laughed loudly. "Only fight? You little girl are really interesting. Unfortunately, no matter how interesting you are, I can only feed you to the primordial devil aura." Once he finished speaking, he fiercely glared at Nye Wuxiang. "You want to swallow my primordial devil aura? Dream on. I'm going to eat you too." City Lord Mei waved her sleeves and walked towards them with large strides. A nascent soul cultivator against a core formation cultivator was a battle without any suspense, so City Lord Mei wasn't worried at all. What he was worried about was whether he could get his primordial devil aura back after it was absorbed by this little girl. According to reason, as long as the primordial devil aura still existed, he should be able to absorb it. After all, he was a nascent soul cultivator while this little girl was only a core formation cultivator. It was impossible for her to compete with him. However, this kind of thing had never happened before, so it was hard to be certain. Seeing that City Lord Mei was ignoring her, she wanted to directly grab Nye Wuxiang. Emo Chenga's gaze turned cold. She opened the Lotus Scarlet umbrella and blocked City Lord Mei's path. City Lord Mei was slightly astonished when she saw her actions. "Little girl, do you really want to stop me?" He hadn't seen a cultivator like this for many years. She was already in the core formation realm and her strength wasn't weak at all. This junior should know the gap between nascent soul and core formation, right? Emo Chenga didn't say anything. The Lotus Scarlet umbrella purified the spiritual aura around her body and blocked the devil aura emitted by City Lord Mei. She then moved her hand and threw something. Rumble. After a loud explosion, City Lord Mei flung his sleeves and coldly stared at Emo Chenga. "Although your magic weapon is intelligent, you're only a core formation cultivator in the end. Do you think you can injure me like this?" His gaze turned cold. He made a hand seal and devil aura gathered between his fingers, ready to attack Emo Chenga. Emo Chenga focused. She knew the spirit cloud's Rui couldn't repel a nascent soul cultivator, but it was good to buy some time. Rumble. Before City Lord Mei's devil aura could attack, another loud explosion was heard. Soon after, Qiu Qingrua's pleasantly surprised voice rang out. "The restriction is broken." Chapter 416. Under the covetous gaze of a nascent soul cultivator, Emo Chenga knew it would be very difficult, almost impossible, to escape unscathed. However, at this moment, even if she didn't stand in front of Nye Wuxiang, City Lord Mei still wouldn't let her go. That being the case, she might as well stake it all. Emo Chenga was confident that she still had a chance. Once the restriction was broken, the others didn't stop and escaped one after another. In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere around them disappeared. City Lord Mei snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Juniors, I'll let you roam freely for a while." In his opinion, killing these two little girls in front of him was only a matter of time. Once he was free, killing these people would be as easy as flipping his hand. If they wanted to escape, then let them escape. In any case, they couldn't escape from his palm. With this thought in mind, City Lord Mei's gaze turned cold. Her right hand suddenly turned into a claw and suddenly extended to grab Emo Chenga. Right at that moment, a sharp whistling sound was heard. A talisman appeared in Emo Chenga's hand and turned into a dazzling white light, attacking City Lord Mei. The aura of a nascent soul cultivator. City Lord Mei was shocked. How could it have the aura of a nascent soul cultivator? Could it be that this little girl? No, it was only a talisman that sealed the power of a nascent soul cultivator's magic weapon? After realizing this, he felt relieved. It seems this little girl's identity is also extraordinary. She actually has such a treasure. However, the power released by the talisman greatly astonished City Lord Mei. This kind of power was no different from a real nascent soul cultivator's attack. How was this possible? Taking advantage of City Lord Mei dodging, Emo Chenga grabbed Nye Wuxiang and ran towards the place where the restriction was broken. On the way, she didn't forget to put the spiritual beasts into her spiritual beast pouch. No matter how smart Fei Fei was, it was useless at this time. Although Xiaofan and Xiaohua could help, they would lose their lives if they were careless in the hands of a nascent soul cultivator. That being the case, she might as well put them into her spiritual beast pouch and escape. Even if she couldn't escape, they could at most become other people's spiritual beasts. Junior, where do you think you're going? City Lord May shouted. However, the power of that talisman was extraordinary. By the time she got rid of it, Mo Chenga had already escaped from the place where the restriction was broken. City Lord May was extremely angry. She had thought that there were only a few core formation cultivators, but she had underestimated them in the end. City Lord May coldly snorted as she thought of this. She waved her sleeves and flew out of the place where the restriction had been broken. She was too naive to think that she could escape from his heart with just a talisman. Once she jumped out of the cave, Mo Chenga swept her gaze around and discovered that several people who escaped earlier than them were currently fighting with core formation cultivators from Descending Stars City. She snorted coldly in her heart. Although these people weren't her enemies, they used her and Ye Wuxiang to stall City Lord May while they escaped. They really weren't good companions. Since that was the case, she would not be meddlesome even if these people were stopped. Instead, she was elated. As such, these Descending Star City cultivators all had a target and no one stopped her. Of course, even so, she might not be able to escape because behind her was the only nascent soul cultivator. That talisman was something she prepared for Qin Shi before she left. Although it had the power of a nascent soul cultivator's magic weapon, it wasn't a real nascent soul cultivator's attack. In just a moment, City Lord May would be able to escape. It could be said that City Lord May's situation was the most serious. Time was of the essence. She searched her Chengkuan bag and took out the land-shrinking ruler she got from Mo Yaoqing. In terms of speed, even if she had a top-grade flying magic weapon, cloud-treading boots, she still wouldn't be able to get rid of a nascent soul cultivator. She could only use her magic weapon to increase the distance between them and then think of a way to enter the virtual sky world. Where do you think you're going? City Lord May shouted angrily behind her. Mo Chenga's heart skipped a beat, and a wave of despair welled up in her heart. She actually didn't even have a chance to use the land-shrinking ruler? Nevertheless, even if she felt even more despair, she wouldn't resign herself to death. Seeing City Lord May aggressively rushing out, Mo Chenga unfolded the heaven and earth fan in her hand, using offense as defense and unceremoniously counterattacked. Upon seeing this, City Lord May was so angry that she actually laughed. You're just a grain of rice, yet you dare to compete under the sun and the moon? Right after she finished speaking, she shook her arms, and the devil aura that was originally well restrained suddenly surged out. It was several times more powerful than Elder Liang and the others. Even Ye Wuxiang, who was currently surrounded by primordial devil aura, couldn't compare to it. It was only now that City Lord May truly revealed her strength. A nascent soul cultivator, even if she was only in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, wasn't someone core formation cultivators like them could resist. Nevertheless, Mo Chenga clenched her teeth, unwilling to retreat. As soon as they arrived in Starfall City, they'd already stepped into City Lord May's trap. Right now they had no other way out but to fight. Therefore, she risked her serious injuries and used the power of her magic weapon, spiritual talisman, and the heaven and earth fan to meet them. City Lord May sneered. She already knew the power of the magic weapon and spiritual talisman in Mo Chenga's hands, so she chose to dodge for the time being. At the same time, she didn't forget to use her devil aura to block their way. Right at this moment, a clanging sound was heard. It was as if a sharp weapon had been unsheathed. Soon after, it emitted a sharp whistling sound as it pierced towards City Lord May. City Lord May dodged Mo Chenga's magic weapon and spiritual talisman while preventing them from taking the opportunity to escape. It wasn't until the sword aura enveloped her that she realized someone was sneak attacking her from behind. Who is it? City Lord May's face twisted in anger. Which brat actually dared to sneak attack a nascent soul cultivator like her? What made her even more furious was that this person's sword aura was soundless. While she was distracted, she actually didn't notice it. At this moment, Mo Chenga couldn't help but be startled when she saw Jianxin standing not too far behind her. Although she'd only known this Jianxin for several hours in the cave and didn't know much about him, his previous way of doing things really made her dislike him. He asked her to block the monster, but in the end he refused to lend her a helping hand. Clearly he only had benefits in his eyes and was extremely selfish. But now, he unexpectedly didn't take the opportunity to escape and instead helped her? Jianxin merely glanced at her coldly, then waved his hand, once again creating thousands upon thousands of sword auras which ruthlessly attacked City Lord May. Now wasn't the time to investigate the reason. Mo Chenga clenched her teeth, took out a handful of magic weapons and spiritual talismans from her sleeve, then threw them all out. Every magic weapon and spiritual talisman made by a nascent soul cultivator was extremely precious. Any core formation cultivator who got their hands on them would treasure them as their last life-saving measure. Mo Chinga didn't even count them. She directly grabbed a handful and threw them out. There were 7 or 8 of them. If other core formation cultivators saw this, they would definitely feel extremely distressed. Mo Chinga naturally felt distressed. Before she left, her master and Qin Shi both prepared magic weapons and spiritual talismans for her. However, these things were precious. Even if the 2 nascent soul cultivators weren't stingy, she only had a dozen or so talismans on her. After this round of throwing, she only had 2 or 3 left. No matter how precious an item was, it couldn't be more precious than her life. At this moment, as long as she could preserve her life, she wouldn't be stingy even if she had to give up all the treasures she had. The light from the magic weapons and spiritual talismans shone, shining together with the light from Jianxin's sword aura. For a moment, the sky was filled with dazzling rays of light. The spiritual aura in the surroundings was even more intense and turbulent. City Lord Mei bellowed in the light, "You juniors!" Relying on his high cultivation level, he thought it would be easy to capture them, but unexpectedly he was repeatedly plotted against by these juniors. City Lord Mei was trapped in the spiritual aura and couldn't escape for a while. As for the other cultivators in Descending Star City, under the power of these nascent soul cultivators' magic weapons and spiritual talismans, their hands and feet were tied. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mo Chinga didn't think too much about it. She pulled Nye Wuxiang, held the land-shrinking ruler and rapidly fled into the distance. The situation was urgent, so she had to run a certain distance to give herself time to use the land-shrinking ruler. As soon as the land-shrinking ruler was activated, City Lord Mei would have to spend some time to find her. At that time, she could use that short period of time to enter the virtual sky world. Just as she fled, City Lord Mei escaped from the magic weapons and spiritual talismans. His eyes were burning with anger as he stared furiously in the direction Mo Chinga disappeared. He waved the devil aura around his body and immediately turned into a black flight light, chasing after Mo Chinga. He couldn't care less about the others. It didn't matter if the others escaped or died. The most important thing now was to capture the little girl who had swallowed his Yuan Mo and dismember the other junior to vent the hatred in his heart. As for whether he could advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm in one fell swoop, he couldn't care less now. In the worst case, he was a nascent soul cultivator. At worst, he could abandon Descending Star City and escape by himself. Thinking up to this point, City Lord Mei once again gnashed his teeth in hatred. His plan was foolproof. If he hadn't met these juniors, he would have finished cultivating his primordial devil. As long as he swallowed it, he would be able to advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm in one fell swoop and become a top cultivator in Yunzhong. At that time, he could build Descending Star City into a powerful force not inferior to the 3 devil territories and become one of the top cultivators in Yunzhong who could call the wind and summon the rain. But now, he didn't know if he could take back his primordial devil, and he couldn't swallow all of these core formation cultivators. Mo Chinga didn't even have the time to turn her head to look. Based on the momentum behind her, she already knew City Lord Mei had caught up to her. Fortunately, the land-shrinking ruler could increase her speed and the cloud-treading boots were top-grade magic weapons. City Lord Mei wouldn't be able to catch up to her for a while if she fled with all her might. Nevertheless, the distance between the two of them was getting shorter and shorter. If this continued, she would eventually be caught by City Lord Mei and it would be difficult for her to escape death. What should I do? Mo Chinga's mind raced. Junior, where do you think you're going? City Lord Mei's sharp voice rang out from behind her. A powerful devil aura rushed towards the two of them. Mo Chinga's brows twitched. She didn't expect City Lord Mei to be able to launch a devil aura attack from such a distance. Mo Chinga waved the white silk handkerchief, causing a fog to surround the two of them. She then took out a diamond talisman and slapped it on her body. Even if her chances of escaping alive were very small, she still had to fight until the end. She absolutely couldn't resign herself to death. Seeing the devil aura rushing towards her with a soaring momentum, Mo Chinga only had enough time to open the heaven and earth fan in her haste to block the devil aura behind her. She didn't have much hope in blocking it. Even if she had a lot of magic weapons, how could she possibly block the attack of a nascent soul cultivator? Even if she could survive this attack, she would most likely be seriously injured. Puff. The pain she expected came. A wave of power penetrated the white silk handkerchief's defense, the diamond talisman's protective cover, and the heaven and earth fan's obstruction, directly penetrating her chest. Her aura surged and she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Am I really going to die? This thought emerged in her mind. She had experienced so many dangerous situations, but none of them had made her feel as close to death as she did today. But she couldn't bear to die. How could she bear to die? Thousands of miles away in the celestial pole, there was still someone waiting for her to return. Ah! An unexpected scream rang out. It was City Lord May's voice. Mo Chenga endured the pain and hurriedly turned her head to look. However, what she saw left her dumbfounded. City Lord May, who was still quite a distance away from her, had the devil aura all over her body curled into a ball. It seemed she was seriously injured. At that moment, the heaven and earth fan in her hand suddenly emitted an incomparably pure and powerful aura. Mo Chenga didn't have time to think. She turned her head and saw the bewildering trace fog not too far away. She pulled Nia Wuxiang, then ran towards that direction. Chapter 417. Inside the nameless valley, it was a complete mess. Under the power of the magic talismans, the transporting formation on the ground was destroyed. None of the cultivators from Descending Star City were spared. All of them were seriously injured. As for the other cultivators who escaped from the disorienting cave, Jin Shi and the other two didn't have enough medicinal pills. Yugue was already dead and Yong and Chiu weren't much better off. Their lives were hanging by a thread. The only one who was still in good condition was the sword cultivator Jianxin. Although he took the initiative to attack Mei City, City Lord May's target was Nia Wuxiang and Mo Chenga, so she ignored him. Therefore he was only injured by City Lord May's devil aura. Right at this moment, a person flew out of the broken restriction node. This person was dressed in black. He was tall, had a gloomy expression, and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. The spiritual aura around him surged. When he lifted his sleeves, a silver light could be vaguely seen. He looked coldly in the direction City Lord May disappeared, then lowered his head to look at the scene. He snorted coldly and waved his right hand. A gust of devil aura gushed out and hit the bodies of the seriously injured cultivators. Elder Liang, who was seriously injured but hadn't died, was indescribably shocked. You didn't die. The person sneered and said gloomily, "Do you think I'm a bunch of idiots?" He lifted his silver fake hand and smashed a mass of devil aura on Elder Liang's body. Elder Liang, who was already seriously injured, instantly stopped breathing. The person didn't stop moving. With a mass of devil aura in his hand, he instantly killed almost all the people present, including the cultivators from Descending Star City and the cultivators who were deceived like him. Although these people were seriously injured, judging from this person's effortless performance, his strength was obviously extraordinary. Seeing this, Jianxin shook his sleeves. His flying sword emitted a clear cry and stared at the person with extreme vigilance. The person just glanced at him and didn't intend to attack. He raised his hand and put the Qingquan bags of the devil cultivators into his bag. He said expressionlessly, "You can have the rest." Right after he said that, he shook his sleeves and flew in the opposite direction of City Lord May. Jianxin heaved a sigh of relief. He covered his chest and coughed. Before he entered the secret place, he had already noticed this person. He was also at the peak of the middle stage of core formation. With just a glance, he could tell that this person's fake hands were extraordinarily powerful and definitely not someone easy to deal with. Sure enough, this person had been hiding in the cave while they had been battling with City Lord May. He hadn't revealed a single trace of himself. So, he had easily escaped after they had lured City Lord May away. Now that both of them were injured, this person actually didn't forget to seize the opportunity to kill them and seize their treasures after coming out of the cave. He was truly meticulous, ruthless, and greedy. Fortunately, this person did not intend to be his enemy. Although he was injured, he wasn't as badly injured as the others. If they were to fight, they might not necessarily lose to him. Since he was so smart, he would naturally take advantage of the situation and leave. If he stayed here any longer, who knew what would happen? Thinking up to this point, Jianxin raised his head to look in the direction Mo Chenga and the others fled. A hint of worry flashed in his eyes. He remembered that the bewildering trace fog was in that direction. If the two of them were lucky and could enter the bewildering trace fog, they would still have a chance to escape. However, under the pursuit of a nascent soul cultivator, would they be able to hold on until then? Jianxin thought for a while, then shook his head. He picked up the remaining Qingquan bags on the ground, summoned his flying sword, and also fled in the opposite direction. He treasured his own life more. Now that things had come to this, he could only pray for good luck for them. At this moment, Mo Chenga was running frantically. She didn't know why City Lord May was blocked by the heaven and earth fan, but now wasn't the time to investigate this. Fortunately, this time, City Lord May's breath was getting farther and farther away. He didn't chase after her even after she safely entered the bewildering trace fog. Mo Chenga breathed a sigh of relief. At this distance, she didn't even need the land-shrinking ruler to have enough time to enter the virtual sky world. She looked down at the still unconscious Nye Wuxiang and noticed that her primordial devil aura had spread to her hand. A trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes, but in the end she still pressed the space between her eyebrows and activated the virtual sky world. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. City Lord May's breath was still so far away. Finally, the pearl between her eyebrows shone brightly, engulfing both her and Nye Wuxiang. Seeing the familiar small house and flowing water again, Mo Chenga sat paralyzed in the small house, almost unable to move, as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. It wasn't only because she was attacked by City Lord May, causing the spiritual breath in her body to surge and seriously injured, but also because she was so nervous that she was almost on the verge of collapse. Strictly speaking, the crisis this time wasn't as dangerous as the one on Demonic Mountain. However, at that time she had Qinshi by her side. He was very experienced, so he often avoided danger in advance. This time, however, she was almost single-handedly facing the pursuit of a nascent soul cultivator. After closing her eyes to rest for a while, she suddenly heard Nye Wuxiang groan. Mo Chenga opened her eyes and was shocked to see Nye Wuxiang, who was thrown aside by her. Ever since she absorbed that monster, Nye Wuxiang's whole body had been enveloped by primordial devil aura. She was like a silkworm spinning a cocoon, completely motionless. At this very moment, the primordial devil aura around her body began to surge incessantly, as if it was very restless. Mo Chenga carefully observed for a while and discovered that the primordial devil aura and the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world seemed to be fighting. How could this be? She muttered to herself. While she was pondering, she suddenly felt a pain in her left hand. She looked down and saw that it was eroded by primordial devil aura when she pulled Nye Wuxiang to escape. Primordial devil aura was very similar to the dead aura she encountered before. They both had corrosive power. Therefore, before she entered the virtual sky world, she was worried that primordial devil aura would also prevent her from entering the virtual sky world. In that case, she could only hide in the mystifying trace fog and play hide-and-seek with City Lord May. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Compared to dead aura, this primordial devil aura was a bit less violent and a bit purer. But when she was certain that primordial devil aura and the virtual sky world didn't conflict, she discovered that the situation wasn't that simple. If this primordial devil aura was the purest devil aura from the distant past era, then the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world was also the purest spiritual aura in the world today. In that case, it wasn't impossible for the two to conflict. Seeing that the confrontation between the devil aura and the spirit aura was becoming more and more violent, Mo Chenga hesitated for a moment and laid a formation around Nye Wuxiang to block the spiritual aura outside. After a while, Nye Wuxiang slowly calmed down and continued to fall into a deep sleep, which made Mo Chenga heave a sigh of relief. From the looks of it, Nye Wuxiang probably wouldn't wake up in a short time. The monster from before was so powerful that it could be said it surpassed Nye Wuxiang's realm. Under such circumstances, Nye Wuxiang's behavior was basically absorbing the monster's primordial devil aura by force. If she wanted to wake up, she would have to turn all the primordial devil aura into her own. In that case, it would take at least a year for her to wake up. This made Mo Chenga happy on one hand and worried on the other. She was happy because she could leave the virtual sky world before Nye Wuxiang woke up, so she wouldn't have to explain anything to her. But she was worried because she would have to take care of Nye Wuxiang for some time. In any case, the situation was already like this, so she could only let nature take its course. After thinking up to this point, Mo Chenga took a short rest and ordered the 2 stone sculpture puppets to clean up a wooden house. She then carefully laid a formation inside the wooden house to isolate the spiritual aura. Afterward, she moved Nye Wuxiang into that house and left her to fend for herself. She couldn't help Nye Wuxiang digest the primordial devil aura at all. Now she could only rely on Nye Wuxiang herself. If she could absorb all the primordial devil aura, she might even be able to profit from the disaster and her cultivation level would rise greatly. But if she couldn't absorb it completely, she might have to suffer a backlash. As for what the consequences would be, Mo Chenga couldn't guess. After dealing with Nye Wuxiang, she released the 3 spiritual beasts and sent them to cultivate on their own. As for herself, she regulated her breathing for several days. After temporarily controlling her injuries, she began to think about this matter. There were a lot of things left in City Lord May's matter. First of all, her injuries weren't light. Wuxiang needed several years to digest the primordial devil aura, so she might also need several years to completely recover from her remaining injuries. Second, she was eroded by the primordial devil aura. Although it wasn't serious, it would take some time to force it out of her body. Finally, she couldn't figure out why City Lord Mei was injured. While she was healing her injuries, Mo Chenga recalled the situation at that time over and over again. The white silk handkerchief, the diamond talisman, and the heaven and earth fan. These three treasures allowed her to survive City Lord Mei's attack, but she only suffered serious injuries. The white silk handkerchief and the diamond talisman didn't have any problems. Only the heaven and earth fan emitted a strong and vast sacred aura at that time. But when she took out the heaven and earth fan afterward, it was still the same as before. She couldn't find that kind of aura at all. If she remembered correctly, this aura should be the divine dragon's aura she once felt in the divine dragon sacrificial temple. The land of hiding dragon collapsed, the divine dragon sacrificial temple disappeared, and the dragon bones were also scattered all over the ground. At that time the divine dragon's aura was a lot weaker. After she picked it up and made it into the heaven and earth fan, the divine dragon's aura became even harder to detect. This made her wonder whether the method of refining the magic weapon was wrong. After all, even Mo Yaoqing couldn't refine the heaven and earth fan. However, she told her that the method of refining the magic weapon should be correct. It was just that even when Mo Yaoqing conceived this magic weapon, she didn't expect that someone would actually use dragon bones to refine it, right? After all, the bones of ordinary demonic beasts above the 8th rank were just hard to break, but they wouldn't have such a powerful aura. Mo Chenga accepted this explanation. In any case, after the experiment, this heaven and earth fan was refined with dragon bones and was extremely tough. This was an obvious benefit. However, she never expected that this thing would actually emit such a strong divine dragon's aura one day. Could it be that after these dragon bones were refined, the dragon's aura didn't actually disperse but was hidden deep inside? Thinking of this possibility, Mo Chenga became excited. If that was the case, the power of her heaven and earth fan wouldn't just be what it was now. If she could stimulate that vast and sacred divine dragon's aura, her heaven and earth fan would definitely be comparable to those ancient spiritual treasures. But how could she stimulate this divine dragon's aura? She carefully recalled the scene at that time. City Lord Mei's devil aura attack. Right. Primordial devil aura. Although City Lord Mei couldn't absorb that monster, she cultivated that mysterious technique, so she also had primordial devil aura in her body. Chapter 418. Master. Upon hearing Feifei's voice, Mo Chenga opened her eyes. This was the 5th year since she escaped from City Lord Mei and hid inside the virtual sky world. During these 5 years she never went out. First, she spent 1 year to force the primordial devil aura out of her hand. Then she spent the next 4 years in closed-door meditation to recuperate and heal her injuries. A nascent soul cultivator's attack was no small matter. Although she managed to escape, her injuries weren't light. After these 5 years she still hadn't fully recovered. Based on her own estimation, it would take another 4 to 5 years. Mo Chenga sighed. Seriously speaking, it was still because her foundation wasn't solid enough. Back when she was in the foundation building realm, she took advantage of Zhong Muling's 5 spirit fruit and advanced from the early stage to the middle stage in one fell swoop, saving her more than 10 years. Later, for the sake of forming her gold core, she patiently slowed down her cultivation speed. This was both for the sake of her mental state and for the sake of her weak foundation. Because of this, she didn't encounter any difficulties when she formed her gold core. Now, her problem was similar to that year. She formed her gold core at the age of 86 and advanced to the middle stage in just 13 years. This time, although it wasn't as exaggerated as when she was in the foundation building realm, she was still able to advance so quickly because she took advantage of dual cultivation. A weak foundation was bound to bring about an unstable cultivation state. Even though she traveled all over the world for the sake of cultivating her mental state and came to Yunzhong, which was a vast ocean away, she still couldn't completely solve this problem. Now she was only 106 years old. Not only was she already in the middle stage of the core formation realm, but she even wasted several years recuperating. If this matter were to spread, it would really be shocking. After she carefully considered her injuries this time, she felt it might not be a disaster. After she was injured, she had to spend time recuperating and recuperating. Only in this way could she restore her cultivation level before she was injured. This way she would have the opportunity to slowly lay a more solid foundation. After all, her goal was to advance to the nascent soul realm and then advance to the deification realm to become an immortal. Master, I'm calling you. Can't you hear me? Feifei's delicate voice rang out, but its tone was very hateful. Emo Chinga felt a bit helpless. Ever since Feifei awakened, she felt she had completely lost her dignity as a master. However, she also felt it was very boring to argue with a spiritual beast about this, so she just let it be. What do you want to say? Emo Chinga asked. Feifei raised its paw and pointed at the hut next door. There seems to be some movement over there. She was the one who tidied up that small hut for Nie Wuxiang to live in for the time being. Ever since Nie Wuxiang swallowed the primordial devil aura 5 years ago, there hadn't been any movements. Since Nie Wuxiang had to heal herself, she didn't pay much attention to it. Feifei, on the other hand, often ran over to take a look with great interest. Therefore, Emo Chinga was relieved to let Feifei take care of Nie Wuxiang. Although this little fellow's personality was a little hateful, it was extremely intelligent. There was no need to treat it as a spirit beast at all. There was basically nothing to worry about that was given to it. There had been no change in the past 5 years, but now there was actually a change. For the time being, Emo Chinga stopped treating her injuries. She stood up and walked towards the small room. Through the small room's window, Emo Chinga saw that the primordial devil aura surrounding Nie Wuxiang seemed to have mostly disappeared. Her aura, on the other hand, was much more stable. Apparently, Nie Wuxiang had already absorbed more than half of the primordial devil aura in the past 5 years. At the very least, she wouldn't suffer from a backlash. As for the movement mentioned by Feifei, she observed for a while and found that Nie Wuxiang's breath was heavy, seemingly showing signs of waking up. Emo Chinga furrowed her brows. Master, do you want to throw her out? Feifei suggested mischievously from the side. Emo Chinga rolled her eyes at it. In fact, whether it was Feifei, Xiaofan or Xiaohua, none of them were very friendly to other people who invaded this area. Back when Qin Shi was here, Xiaofan wasn't and Feifei hadn't awakened yet. But at that time, Feifei and Xiaohua were already indifferent to Qin Shi. This time, she brought Nie Wuxiang inside, so the attitude of these 3 spiritual beasts was even more obvious. Xiaohua completely ignored them, Xiaofan occasionally complained, and Feifei even said from time to time that it wanted to throw her out. However, in any case, she was still their master, so they didn't dare to really do anything. Feifei had also always been taking good care of Nie Wuxiang. What else can we do? Feifei lightly jumped onto her back, put its hand on her shoulder, and looked inside through the window. Who knows when she'll wake up? What should we do then? This secret is no small matter. Emo Chinga reached out and flicked it off her shoulder. She said, "Get ready to go out." Feifei was stunned. Are we really going to throw her out? Emo Chinga stared at it with a faint smile. Weren't you just persuading me to throw her out? Why are you soft-hearted now? I'm not soft-hearted. Feifei pursed its lips and said, It's just that you're soft-hearted, master. You definitely won't really throw her out. Having a spiritual beast that was too smart wasn't necessarily a good thing. Emo Chinga shook her head and used her divine comprehension to call Xiaofan and Xiaohua. Both of you go into the spiritual beast bag. We're going out. Xiaohua couldn't speak, so it stared at her with puzzled eyes. Xiaofan, on the other hand, shouted, Master, what about your injury? Before Emo Chinga could answer, Feifei interrupted, Master, you're not going out to fight. What does it matter? But Feifei's attitude made Xiaofan very angry, but it didn't have Feifei's guts. In front of its master, it didn't dare to fight back. It's all right. Emo Chinga promptly said, We're just going out to do something. It's been so long, there won't be any problems. As she spoke, she pulled Xiaohua over first and stuffed it into the spiritual beast bag. Xiaofan and Feifei did the same. Seeing her insistence, they could only obediently jump in. Once everything was ready, Emo Chinga took out a pair of gloves from her Qingkuan bag and put them on. These gloves were made from the natural silk brocade she left behind after refining the heaven and earth fan. Apart from the hard-to-find Qiyun stone and the 1,000-year-old chalcedony, she had spent a lot of money to buy the other materials, so she still had some left. Since she couldn't touch Nie Wuxiang directly, she took out the natural silk brocade and made this pair of gloves. As long as she put on the gloves and touched Nie Wuxiang, she wouldn't be eroded by her primordial devil aura. Once everything was done, she opened the small house's restriction and pulled Nie Wuxiang out of the virtual sky world. As soon as they left the virtual sky world, they felt a gust of cold wind. Emo Chinga looked around. The surroundings were still foggy. She spread her divine sense, but she still didn't sense any cultivators' auras. It had been 5 years, so City Lord May naturally wouldn't still be here waiting to hunt them down. Besides, his plan had failed and he'd killed so many core formation cultivators with powerful backgrounds. Afterward, he'd definitely become the enemy of various forces. Those forces had many late-stage nascent soul cultivators, so he probably couldn't protect himself. Mo Chinga put away her thoughts and looked at Nya Wuxiang. After a moment of contemplation, she took out a black robe from her Chengkuan bag and firmly covered Nya Wuxiang. This black robe was only ordinary clothing and couldn't hide her primordial devil aura. However, this way she looked no different from a devil cultivator and wouldn't arouse other people's suspicion. Soon after, Mo Chinga supported Nya Wuxiang and chose a direction opposite to Descending Star City. When she entered the bewildering trace fog, she didn't go too deep, so it only took her some time to leave. This fog only made people lose their sense of direction. It didn't have any other disadvantages. After flying north for about an hour, Mo Chinga finally saw a city between the mountains. Balan country was mostly mountainous, so most of the devil areas were located in the mountain ranges. The city under her feet was also filled with thick devil aura, which was a bit thicker than Descending Star City. It should also be a devil area. Mo Chinga didn't hesitate and descended. Although this devil area was close to Descending Star City, its scale was much larger than Descending Star City's. It shouldn't have anything to do with City Lord May, so she could rest assured. Soon she landed in front of the city's gate. In general, all cities belonging to cultivators had a no-fly order, so it was better to walk into the city and abide by the rules. The city was very tall. The city walls were made of an unknown material, but they were actually pitch black. A flag with a ghost face was fluttering on top of the city wall. At first glance, Mo Chinga felt this ghost face was very familiar. After carefully examining it, she remembered that she saw Yang Qingji's ghost face banner several years ago. It looked exactly like this. Could this be Guifang City? Mo Chinga muttered in her heart, then walked towards the devil cultivator guarding the city. When the devil cultivator saw her and Nya Wuxiang, he didn't dare to neglect them and asked politely, "Seniors, are you here to travel or to visit a friend?" Sure enough, this was Guifang City. Mo Chinga's expression was as usual. She said faintly, "My friend is injured, so we're looking for a place to stay." The devil cultivator had already noticed Nya Wuxiang. Judging from her momentum, she was obviously a powerful devil cultivator, but she was being supported by a Dao cultivator. He looked a bit strange. He originally wanted to ask again, but he didn't expect Mo Chinga to answer him. Maybe it was because Mo Chinga's expression was too calm, or maybe it was because their cultivation levels were enough to intimidate him, but the foundation-building devil cultivator only looked at them once before he moved aside. According to the rules of our Guifang City, as long as you don't do anything harmful to Guifang City, any cultivator is free to come and go. Seniors, please. Mo Chinga nodded at him, then helped Nya Wuxiang into the city. Since this was Guifang City, it should be safe. They had met Yang Qingji once before, and their cooperation was quite pleasant. There were no conflicts between them. Guifang City was one of the 3 great devil areas, so it shouldn't have anything to do with Descending Star City, so they didn't need to worry about City Lord May. With this thought in mind, Mo Chinga casually stopped a devil cultivator passing by. "Excuse me," that devil cultivator had just entered the aura refining realm, so he was rather flattered to be stopped by a core formation cultivator. He stuttered, Senior, what orders do you have?" Mo Chinga calmly asked, "Do you know if there are any inns in the city that rent immortals' caves?" Upon hearing this question, the devil cultivator calmed down a bit. He bowed and answered, "Senior, I don't know if other inns can rent immortals' caves, but the biggest inn in our Guifang City definitely can." "Where's that inn?" The devil cultivator pointed at the other end of the street. "What a coincidence. That inn is nearby. Senior, please look. If you go this way, you'll see the tallest one. It's called Immortal Devil Residence." Mo Chinga nodded. She casually took out a spirit stone and tossed it to him. "Thank you." The devil cultivator was delighted to receive the spirit stone. "Thank you, Senior." Although devil cultivators like them couldn't use spirit stones directly, they could use them as money. A spirit stone was very precious to a cultivator who had just entered the aura refining realm like him. After putting away the spirit stone, the devil cultivator raised his head, only to see Mo Chinga and Nya Wuxiang's figures had already disappeared from the street. He couldn't help but reveal an envious expression. "When can I have such a high cultivation level?" Chapter 419. When they arrived at Immortal Devil Abode, Mo Chenga spent some spirit stones to rent an immortal's cave. As soon as the shopkeeper saw them, he invited them into the VIP room to entertain them. Then, seeing that they were traveling together and their cultivation levels were quite high, he suggested renting a high-grade immortal's cave on the mountain behind Guifang City. Although it was expensive, it was very quiet and wouldn't be disturbed easily. Moreover, these immortals' caves could also provide devil aura-blocking formations according to the requirements of the guests. Many foreign high-level cultivators like to rent such immortals' caves. Mo Chenga felt that she and Ye Wuxiang really needed a quiet place in their current situation, so she followed the shopkeeper's suggestion. In any case, she could afford that little bit of money. After deciding on a temporary residence, Mo Chenga didn't take Ye Wuxiang there immediately. Instead, she asked about other things. "Shopkeeper, it's my first time in Guifang City, so I don't know much about the situation here. Could you explain it to me?" The shopkeeper was just a high-level aura-refining cultivator who hadn't built his foundation yet. Hearing a core formation cultivator's question, he didn't dare to be negligent and said politely, "What does Senior want to know?" "As long as I know, I'll tell you everything I know." Mo Chenga smiled and said, "It's not that serious. It's just that I'm an ascetic cultivator and rarely go out. This is my first time in Guifang City, so I don't know much about the situation here, so I'm just asking. Shopkeeper, you don't need to be restrained. If there's anything you need to pay attention to in Guifang City, just tell me." Upon hearing this, the shopkeeper bowed and said, "Senior is too polite. It's just a piece of cake." After a pause, the shopkeeper said slowly, "I think Senior knows that Guifang City is one of the 3 devil territories in Yunzhong. The city lord, Guifang Devil Monarch, is one of the 3 devil monarchs in Yunzhong and has extraordinary strength. Compared with the other 2 devil territories, the biggest feature of our Guifang City is freedom. In our Guifang City, both devil cultivators and righteous path cultivators are treated equally. Moreover, we're free to come and go in Guifang City. No matter what kind of cultivator you are, you only need to tell us why you're here and you won't be questioned when you leave. Of course, cultivators who are active in Guifang City must ensure 2 things. First, you can't harm the interests of Guifang City. Second, you can't fight in the city and hurt others. As long as you can do these 2 things, you'll be completely unrestrained in Guifang City." Mo Chenga's heart stirred. The city of Devil Path actually had such open-minded people? What if someone disobeys the rules? The shopkeeper smiled when he heard this. He looked as if he didn't take it seriously and said proudly, "Senior, you worry too much. Who in the entire Yunzhong doesn't know that our city lord's cultivation is unfathomable? Moreover, the city lord's way of handling matters couldn't be more fair. In front of him, regardless of the level of cultivation, only the facts were spoken. As long as one followed the rules, one would receive the city lord's protection. If one didn't follow the rules, one would be killed on the spot. Therefore, there are all kinds of cultivators in Guifang City. Many cultivators who have committed crimes outside will choose to hide in Guifang City temporarily. However, even if there are many ferocious people gathered in the city, these people don't dare to be presumptuous in our Guifang City." "I see. It sounded like this Guifang City was an excellent hiding place. She happened to come to the most suitable place by accident. In that case, no one will come to disturb us if we stay here for the time being?" "Of course," the shopkeeper said. "If Senior doesn't want people to disturb you, you only need to set a small restriction outside the cave and refuse to receive sound-transmitting talismans. In this way, other people will know Senior's intention and won't come to disturb you." "That's good." Mo Chenga thought for a while, then took out a small bag of spirit stones from her Chengkuan bag and put it on the table. "Here are 2,000 spirit stones. We'll temporarily rent this place for 3 years. You can arrange it." Seeing that she was so generous, the shopkeeper couldn't help but feel happy. He smiled flatteringly again and again. Yes. Senior, please follow me. Junior will take Senior to choose an immortal's cave." "And?" Mo Chenga nodded slightly. She still helped Nye Wuxiang up and followed the shopkeeper out of the VIP lounge and out of the inn. Probably because Mo Chenga paid the spirit stones too readily, the shopkeeper also gave her a lot of information along the way. From the infighting between Guifang Devil Monarch's disciples to the news of the marketplace, as long as she showed a little bit of interest, he told her everything he knew. Mo Chenga still remembered when she saw Yang Qingji in the Cloud Ascending Cranes group. Although she didn't say it out loud, she was secretly surprised. With Yang Qingji's identity and status, he didn't need to covet the Cloud Ascending Crane's reward. Now that she heard from the shopkeeper, she realized Yang Qingji also had his own difficulties. Although Yang Qingji was Guifang Devil Monarch's most favored disciple, he was ranked last. There were several senior martial brothers and sisters above him. Two of them were already in the peak stage of the core formation realm and were about to advance into the nascent soul realm. Ever since Guifang Devil Monarch took him in, he doted on him very much. Not only did he personally teach him, but he also gave him many treasures that others couldn't see. This naturally made the other disciples envious. Although Yang Qingji advanced quickly, he was still young and unlike his senior martial brothers and sisters, he didn't have his own confidants. Because of this he suffered a lot in private. But Guifang Devil Monarch wouldn't stand up for him in these matters. Although he doted on him, if he couldn't even solve this small matter, then the disciple he doted on would be too useless. Now that Guifang Devil Monarch was old, although he didn't show any signs of dying, many of his disciples were unwilling to be left out. Many of them were eager to make trouble and made connections everywhere, hoping to inherit their master's position. However, since Guifang City was one of the 3 devil domains in Yunzhong, how could it be so easy to obtain the position of city lord? In the end, Guifang Devil Monarch was annoyed. He announced to the whole city that when he abdicated, among his disciples, the one with the highest cultivation level would inherit the position of city lord. The prerequisite for this was that the disciple must advance into the nascent soul realm. If no one advanced into the nascent soul realm, foreign cultivators could seize the position of city lord with their own strength. After Guifang Devil Monarch announced this order, his disciples finally calmed down and began to cultivate with all their might. Among them, his 2 oldest disciples naturally had the most advantage. They were already in the peak stage of the core formation realm, and the nascent soul realm was just a threshold. However, Yang Qingji's talent was extremely high. While his senior martial brothers and sisters cultivated with all their might, they didn't forget to drag him down. Although Yang Qingji's aptitude was excellent, he wasn't good at power struggles, so he had to deliberately avoid it and travel around Guifang City. Hearing this, Mo Tiange wasn't too surprised. Where there was influence, there would be power struggles. Even Xianqing School, which was currently in a period of harmony, couldn't completely avoid it, let alone Guifang City, where the city lord could order the whole city's people. What she was curious about was why this innkeeper, whose cultivation level was only in the aura refining realm, was so clear about these things. Upon hearing her question, the innkeeper smiled and said, "Senior, you don't know, but in our Guifang City, these are all open secrets. Not many people don't know about them." He then said with some worry, "In fact, we're all very worried. If the city lord really passes away, I'm afraid the good days of our Guifang City will also come to an end." "Why?" Mo Tiange smiled and said, "The establishment of Guifang City isn't a matter of a day or two. How can it be so easy to fall?" The innkeeper said, "Senior is a Dao cultivator, so you might not be very clear about the matters of us devil cultivators. We devil cultivators worship individual strength the most, so we don't have any sects, we only have cities. Moreover, in a city there's usually only one nascent soul cultivator who is the city lord. The city lord's words are the devil territory's iron law. Our Guifang City was established by relying on the prestige of city lord Guifang Devil Monarch. If the city lord passes away and the successor doesn't have enough strength, we'll change from one of the 3 great devil territories to a small devil territory that can be bullied by anyone." "Oh, so it's like this." She seemed to have heard this before. Even if the scale of the devil path was slightly smaller than that of the righteous path, how could there only be so few nascent soul cultivators among the 3 great and 7 small devil territories in northern Qilin country? It was probably because after devil cultivators advanced to the nascent soul realm, they would either establish their own city and enjoy the glory of being admired by thousands of people, or they would have no interest in it and wholeheartedly seek more powerful strength. In this way, the strength of a city's deterrence completely depended on the strength of the city lord. If the city lord's strength wasn't enough, he could only submit to others. In this case, once Guifang Devil Monarch passed away, whoever succeeded as the city lord would affect the future of Guifang City. If this person's strength wasn't enough, Guifang City would quickly decline from being one of the 3 great devil territories and might even be robbed by other nascent soul cultivators. Thinking about it this way, Guifang Devil Monarch's order was indeed extremely wise. If one of his disciples advanced to the nascent soul realm, he could naturally take over Guifang City. But if no one had this ability, Guifang City was such a big piece of fat meat that it would definitely attract other powerful nascent soul cultivators. At that time, even if his disciples weren't complacent, Guifang City would still be saved. Mo Tiange felt that this Guifang Devil Monarch wasn't only strong, but his brain was also first-rate. Compared to City Lord May of Starfall City, he was many times stronger. No wonder he could establish such a powerful devil territory. Thinking of City Lord May, she couldn't help but ask, "Shopkeeper, are there any other devil territories near Guifang City?" While leading the way, the shopkeeper answered, "Yes, the one closest to us should be Starfall City. But it's only a small devil territory, so it's not a big deal." The shopkeeper's expression was exactly as he said, it was not a big deal. He looked like he didn't care about Starfall City at all. It seemed that the strength of Guifang City also made the cultivators in Guifang City have a very high standard. No matter what, Starfall City still had nascent soul cultivators and many core formation cultivators. But in the end, in the eyes of this shopkeeper who was only in the aura refining realm, he only said one sentence, "It was not a big deal." "Senior, are you interested in Starfall City?" The shopkeeper continued, "This Starfall City fell 5 years ago. Within a day, the City Lord's mansion was completely slaughtered by the people of Night Owl City. Now there are only a few core formation cultivators in charge, so there's really nothing to see." Mo Chinga's interest was piqued. Why did the people of Night Owl City want to slaughter the cultivators of Starfall City? I remember that Night Owl City is also one of the 3 big devil territories, and Starfall City is only a small city. It's not worth fighting over, right? The shopkeeper said, "There have been many ups and downs in the past few years, so I don't know what exactly happened. However, Junior heard that the City Lord of Starfall City practiced some kind of evil technique and actually tricked more than 10 core formation cultivators into sacrificing their souls together. One of the cultivators was from Night Owl City. After the matter was exposed, the City Lord of Night Owl City was furious and slaughtered everyone in Starfall City." "Is that so?" Mo Chinga muttered to herself. As an insider, she naturally knew the truth the best. According to what the shopkeeper said, among the core formation cultivators who were tricked, there were people from Night Owl City, so Starfall City was in big trouble. The shopkeeper continued, "Junior heard that back then, no one escaped from the City Lord's mansion in Descending Star City. All the core formation cultivators died. Only the City Lord, who was already in the nascent soul realm and was no longer in the city, escaped this disaster." Chapter 420. The cave rented by Immortal and Devil Abode was indeed as the shopkeeper said, it was of excellent quality and had a quiet environment. Mo Chinga felt it wasn't bad, so she randomly picked one and settled down. Then she told the shopkeeper that the 2 of them were going to meditate and recuperate, so he didn't need to disturb them before the end of the term. The shopkeeper repeatedly said yes, indicating that the people of the inn would absolutely not disturb them. If the 2 seniors had any instructions, they could go to the inn to find them or send them a voice transmission. Mo Chinga was very satisfied, so she rewarded the shopkeeper with some spirit stones and sent him away. Then she laid restrictions around the cave, indicating that she didn't want to be disturbed. She closed the cave and temporarily isolated it from the world. This cave was very big. It was fully equipped with cultivation rooms, concocting rooms, and spiritual beast rooms. There were also many cultivation rooms. Mo Chinga straightforwardly threw Nye Wuxiang into one of the cultivation rooms to fend for herself while she randomly picked another one. She then laid the devil aura isolating formation left by the shopkeeper and entered the virtual sky world. Since Nye Wuxiang could survive for 5 years, most of the primordial devil aura had been tamed by her, so she didn't need to worry at all. She spent a lot of effort to rent and cave in Guifang City just because it was difficult to explain the virtual sky world. Besides, the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world conflicted with primordial devil aura, so it wasn't as suitable for Nye Wuxiang as Guifang City. In addition, the news she heard from the innkeeper made Mo Chinga a little worried. She wasn't too surprised that City Lord May was still alive. After all, she was a nascent soul cultivator. Even if she couldn't defeat her, she could always run away. With the omnipotent abilities of nascent soul cultivators, she could hide somewhere and wouldn't be found even if she wanted to. Although City Lord May wasn't a threat to them now, Nye Wuxiang swallowed the primordial devil aura he worked hard to cultivate, and she ran away with Nye Wuxiang, causing City Lord May to fall short of success. She turned from a city lord into a stray dog. This hatred could be said to be irreconcilable. Having a nascent soul cultivator as an enemy was really not a good thing. However, it was useless to worry now, so Mo Chinga just thought about it and put it aside. As for the internal grievances in Guifang City, she didn't care. She and Yang Qingji were just acquaintances. Moreover, after so many years, she wasn't in the mood to meddle. This matter reminded her of Ling Yunhe. When she had parted ways with Ling Yunhe, They had agreed to meet after 3 months to collect the reward. Who would have thought that the two of them would fall into City Lord May's trap the moment they left the carefree valley? However, with Ling Yunha's character, he wouldn't go to refuse to pay her, right? Ling Yunha and Ling Yunha didn't want to refuse to pay, right? Amo Chinga couldn't help but laugh. Ling clan devil clan's devil. She mountain she said Amo and ran in Rance Mountain's mountain. They were injured. After cultivating they and seemed to have, and then began to looking ding. They may say. And seemed. They weren't injured in the first place. After this period of cultivation, they seemed to be showing signs of advancing, so they began to look for suitable spiritual herbs to eat again. In terms of spiritual beast cultivation speed, the three of them were already too fast. However, spiritual beasts' realm breakthroughs weren't as troublesome as human cultivators, so Mo Chenga just let them be. In any case, they wouldn't be faster than her in the end. Several months later, while Mo Chenga was adjusting her breath, she suddenly felt something was wrong. Mo Chenga stopped recuperating and opened her eyes. After thinking for a while, she hurriedly left the virtual sky world. As soon as she came out of the virtual sky world, she immediately felt a strong and vast devil aura. As soon as she appeared, the devil aura ignored the devil aura isolation formation and rushed towards her violently. Mo Chenga was startled. She unleashed the art of primordial origin to protect herself before stepping out of her cultivation room. On the way to Nie Wuxiang's cultivation room, the devil aura became denser and denser. Although it couldn't compare to those nascent soul devil cultivators, it wasn't too far off. In fact, the devil aura here was even slightly purer. By the time Mo Chenga stepped into Nie Wuxiang's cultivation room, she was completely shocked. At that moment, Nie Wuxiang was sitting cross-legged on the stone bed, adjusting her breath with her eyes closed. Her whole body was surrounded by thick devil aura. This devil aura seemed to have a life of its own as it circled around her, neither too fast nor too slow. The momentum coming from her body was already far beyond the middle stage of the core formation realm. It was even much higher than the late stage of the core formation realm. She was only one step away from the nascent soul realm. Could it be that Nie Wuxiang made a realm breakthrough? Mo Chenga watched for a while, but in the end she shook her head. No, this wasn't a realm breakthrough. It was the devil aura that was too overbearing, so it had such a strong momentum. That monster was originally prepared by City Lord May for her. With his identity as a nascent soul cultivator, it was absolutely no small matter that this primordial devil aura could help him make a realm breakthrough. Although the part Nie Wuxiang swallowed wasn't all of it, it still surpassed her own realm. With so much primordial devil aura, it wasn't surprising that she had such a strong momentum all of a sudden. However, Mo Chenga couldn't help but recall Master Song Feng's eccentric and ruthless temperament, as well as his appearance that was neither human nor ghost. Now that Nie Wuxiang really embarked on such a path, would she also become like him? Just as she was thinking about this, Nie Wuxiang suddenly opened her eyes and smiled at her. This smile made Mo Chenga's taut heartstrings loosen in an instant. From the looks of it, she seemed to be the same as before. There was nothing wrong with her. So you're awake. How do you feel? Nie Wuxiang stretched herself, and the devil aura around her body suddenly danced along with her movements. I'm so tired. How long did I sleep? 5 years. Seeing that Nie Wuxiang's movements were normal, Mo Chenga knew there was nothing wrong with her, so she felt relieved. So it's been 5 years. Nie Wuxiang seemed to be sighing with emotion. After a while she finally smiled and said, I'm fine. Although I can't completely absorb this devil aura, I've already tamed it. Now I just need to slowly absorb it all. That's good. Now that she was sure Nie Wuxiang was fine, Mo Chenga no longer worried about her. She carefully looked at Nie Wuxiang in front of her and couldn't help but say, looking at your current appearance, you already look like a complete devil cultivator. I wonder if this primordial devil aura has any disadvantages? Will you end up like your master in the future? This question made Nie Wuxiang dazed for a while. After a long time, she lowered her head to look at her hand. On her hand, there used to be a wound corroded by the black water in Carefree Valley. After being cleansed by the primordial devil aura for 5 years, this wound was long gone. The remaining corrosive power was also completely devoured by the primordial devil aura. This primordial devil aura was indeed the most overbearing aura in this world. Neither the dead aura nor the filthy aura could compare to it. I also don't know. Nie Wuxiang looked indifferent as she said calmly, I wasn't a real devil cultivator before. It was just that the spiritual aura and devil aura inside my body were mixed, so I was neither a Dao nor a devil. At present, this primordial devil aura seems to be quite obedient and shows no signs of corroding my body, but it's hard to say how my cultivation level will improve in the future. She hesitated for a moment, then continued to say, the reason why my master became like this is because he practiced the primordial devil great art too early. When he was in the foundation building realm, he suffered chi deviation because he was greedy for more. Now that I'm in the core formation realm, my meridians and dantian were tough enough, so they weren't corroded after being attacked by this primordial devil aura. Logically speaking, I should be better off than him. Although that was the case, she wasn't sure whether she would become like that or not. After all, there were too few people who practiced this so-called primordial devil great art, so she basically didn't have any examples to compare herself with. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, she didn't have a single friend. Coincidentally, she met Nie Wuxiang at this time. During this period of time, the two of them experienced so many things together that she already regarded Nie Wuxiang as a friend, so she couldn't help but feel sad for her. Before this, she had just decided to become a real cultivator, but because of this reason she had no choice but to absorb primordial devil aura and become a devil cultivator. Now, she had to face the possibility of becoming an inhuman monster in the future. Mo Qianga had always felt that although her life could be considered smooth, her life before she was 20 years old was full of difficulties and bumps. It wasn't until now that she realized how lucky she was. Like Nie Wuxiang, she lost her mother when she was born, grew up under her master's hatred and torture, and finally escaped. She wanted to live her own life, but she was forced to accept this kind of future. In the more than 100 years she lived, she suffered a lot. Fate was really unfair to her. You don't have to look at me like that. Nie Wuxiang smiled. This is an unknown in the end. Maybe I'll really become a top cultivator in one fell swoop with the help of primordial devil aura and move unhindered in the world? At that time, I don't know how many people will envy me. In the end, Mo Qianga didn't show any sympathy. Someone with a firm character like Nie Wuxiang didn't need sympathy. Do you know about the primordial devil great art? Nie Wuxiang didn't hesitate. Before I left, I stole a lot of master's treasures, including the primordial devil great art he comprehended. However, it's hard to say whether this primordial devil great art has any mistakes or omissions. In any case, the primordial devil aura in my body is enough for me to absorb for many years. I think I'll slowly tame this primordial devil aura first, then see if I can practice the primordial devil great art. I really don't want to become like Master, who has a bad temper and is neither human nor ghost. Mo Qianga nodded silently. In this kind of situation, this was already the best way. Let's not talk about this. Nie Wuxiang put away her slight melancholy, looked around and asked curiously, where are we? Where are those people? Although I put my life in your hands, I didn't expect you could really escape. It really surprised me. A smile also appeared on Mo Qianga's face. Back then we were only able to escape because of luck. She recounted everything that happened that year in detail, but she changed escaping into the virtual sky world to hiding in the bewildering trace fog. In the end, City Lord Mei didn't find them. As for the others, I also don't know. Later, I came to Guifang City, rented this immortal's cave, and never left it. But I heard that the City Lord's mansion in Descending Star City was slaughtered by Night Owl City in one night. City Lord Mei has long left the city and escaped the disaster. Night Owl City? Nie Wuxiang thought for a moment, then said, so, there were also cultivators from Night Owl City who were tricked into the trap with us that day? That should be the case. The two of them talked about some things. After Nie Wuxiang finished understanding the current situation, she thought for a moment, then asked, you're injured. Do you want to stay here until you recover? Of course. Mo Qianga didn't hesitate. Yunzhong is full of dangerous places. If I'm injured, it'll be really inconvenient. And? Nie Wuxiang expressed her agreement and stretched her body again. Alright, my body is still not used to the current situation, so I'll stay here with you for a few more days. Alas, my body is stiff. For us martial cultivators, not moving for 5 years is really not a good thing. I'll go exercise. She got up, got off the bed and was about to leave the cave. In the next moment, Mo Qianga suddenly felt an extremely strong momentum attack her, and then a loud noise came from the entrance of the cave. She turned to look at the entrance and was instantly dumbfounded. Nie Wuxiang was frozen there with a shocked expression. Her right hand was still in the position of pushing the door, and the restriction and stone door set at the entrance of the cave were completely broken. Chapter 421. Mo Qianga was in a daze for a long time before she regained her composure. She rushed over and saw that the stone door had been smashed into powder, and the restriction at the door was also broken. The stone door was fine. Even a foundation building cultivator could break it, but this restriction was personally laid by her. Although it wasn't a top-grade formation, it couldn't be broken by ordinary core formation cultivators. She looked at Nie Wuxiang in disbelief. "What did you do just now?" Nie Wuxiang, who was still absent-minded, murmured, I just pushed it." After she said that, she finally realized something. She looked down at her hand and saw nothing unusual except for the primordial devil aura on it. No matter what, Nie Wuxiang was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, so the primordial devil aura in her body could only cause this. Mo Chenga shook her head with a bitter smile. "This is good. Even if you run into a nascent soul cultivator, you won't be trampled on." Although this kind of movement couldn't compare to the strength of a nascent soul cultivator, it already had a momentum that could rival it. However, being too powerful wasn't necessarily a good thing. Powerful strength needed an equally powerful container to contain it, and this container was a cultivator's body, meridians, and dantian. Although Nie Wuxiang had this kind of strength now, she was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, which definitely wasn't a good thing. If she used it forcibly, she might explode and die. How could Nie Wuxiang not understand this? She was stunned for a long time before she said, "It's too late to regret now. We can only do as we see fit." As she said that, she looked down at her hand and waved it lightly. With a loud bang, a boulder at the entrance of the cave was smashed into pieces. Nie Wuxiang was a bit dispirited by this scene. How could she move around with such a big movement? Would she really change from a martial cultivator to a devil cultivator in the future? Mo Chenga asked, "How's your body?" "I haven't used the primordial devil aura much, so I can't feel anything." She then lowered her head and sighed. "It seems I'll have to stay here for a long time." "What?" "Although I have the powerful primordial devil aura, I don't have a high enough realm. I must enter closed-door meditation to stabilize my realm." Nie Wuxiang smiled bitterly. "Maybe 3 to 5 years or maybe 10 to 20 years. If I'm unlucky, it's not impossible for me to enter closed-door meditation for 100 years. Mo Chenga agreed. "With how strong your primordial devil aura is now, it'd be best if you advance to the nascent soul realm. That way you'll be able to absorb all of it." Although she hadn't advanced to the nascent soul realm yet, she had 2 nascent soul cultivators by her side, so she understood nascent soul very well. The primordial devil aura in Nie Wuxiang's body was comparable to a nascent soul cultivator's, but because her realm was limited, she couldn't fully display it. Moreover, if she forcibly used it, it would even cause harm to her body. Given the current situation, she would only be able to resolve this crisis if her meridians and dantian completely absorbed it. Nie Wuxiang nodded, then sighed and said, "I also think so. Although I was forced to walk on the path of devil cultivators, I still want to live well and continue cultivating." Whether she was a righteous or a devil wasn't important. In today's world, no one had ever ascended for more than 100,000 years. Even if Nie Wuxiang became a devil cultivator, she didn't need to think too much about it. It wouldn't be too late to consider it when she really had the chance to ascend one day. The two of them discussed it and decided to stay here for some time. Nie Wuxiang decided to subdue all the primordial devil aura first. It was very inconvenient for her to walk outside in her current state. If she couldn't control herself well when she fought, she might hurt herself. As for Mo Chenga, she didn't plan to leave before her injuries were healed. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, things happened one after another, so she didn't have much time to cultivate. After her injuries were healed, she would spend some time recuperating and stabilizing her cultivation level. Then she would go see Ling Yunhe and settle the matter regarding the art of Sunu. At that time, she would consider returning to the Celestial Pole. It had been 7 years since she left the Celestial Pole. If she spent some more time recuperating, she reckoned more than 10 years would have passed. It was really inconvenient to travel outside, especially in such a distant place. Things were different now. There was a blood oath between her and Qin Shi. 5 years ago she was seriously injured, so presumably Qin Shi could also feel it. However, he couldn't come for the time being, so she didn't know how to worry about him. Mo Chenga only briefly told Nie Wuxiang about her plans, but Nie Wuxiang naturally wouldn't say anything. Although the two of them had a good relationship now, it wasn't to the point where they were inseparable. Both of them were very independent cultivators with their own plans. Right now they just happened to have the same goal. As for Nie Wuxiang, not to mention the fact that she was currently plagued by primordial devil aura and couldn't come out of her closed-door meditation in a short time, even if she could, she absolutely wouldn't go back to the Celestial Pole. She spent so much effort to escape from the celestial pole and almost died in the South Sea. Unless she became a top late-stage nascent soul cultivator one day, she wouldn't take the risk to go back. If Master Song Feng was still alive, her fate could be imagined. After a short conversation, the two of them continued to live in this cave without disturbing each other. They both did their own closed-door meditation and recuperated their own injuries. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 5 years had passed. During these 5 years, the two of them had almost no contact with each other. It was only when the rent of the cave expired and the shopkeeper came to collect the rent that they both left the cultivation room. The shopkeeper probably already knew about the cave's stone door being broken. It was just that there were 2 core formation cultivators living here, so it wasn't convenient for him to say anything. When Ye Wuxiang came to collect the rent, the shopkeeper wasn't surprised at all and only asked if it needed to be repaired. Ye Wuxiang directly gave him a pile of spirit stones as compensation and also paid him 10 years of rent. How could the shopkeeper not feel unhappy? He hurriedly ordered people to come over and repair the stone door. In the next 2 years he didn't come to disturb them as usual. Mo Qingge and Ye Wuxiang were very satisfied that the shopkeeper was so sensible. For them, having a quiet place to stay was the most important thing. 5 years later, Mo Qingge stopped cultivating and came out of the virtual sky world. Sensing her breath, the stone door of Ye Wuxiang's cultivation room opened automatically. After not seeing Mo Qingge for 2 years, Ye Wuxiang looked at Mo Qingge carefully. She was both amazed and curious. "You're recuperating? 2 years ago I saw your injuries had just healed. How did your cultivation progress so fast?" It wasn't strange for Ye Wuxiang to be surprised. After she woke up, Mo Qingge's injuries hadn't completely healed. It was only after 3 years that her injuries were completely healed. But now, in just 2 years, she was already halfway to the middle stage of the core formation realm. This kind of cultivation speed was really too exaggerated. Mo Qingge simply answered, "In these 10 years I wasn't recuperating." When her injuries weren't too serious, she began to take a lot of medicinal pills to improve her cultivation level. The reason she did this was because she was ready to come out of closed-door meditation. The stronger she was, the smoother her next business would be. There weren't many things left to do. The first thing was to see Ling Yunhe and settle the matter regarding the art of Sunu, then return to the celestial pole. In addition, if possible, she also planned to go to Dansha sect to inquire about some things related to Mo Yaoqing. Mo Yaoqing had passed away for more than 5,000 years. The grievances between her and Dansha sect had long been settled the moment she left Yunzhong. That being the case, Mo Qingge naturally wouldn't get entangled in this matter. The grievances of her ancestors weren't something a junior several thousand years later like her could meddle in. Besides, after so many years, Dansha sect's disciples had changed several generations, so she really didn't need to take it seriously. After Mo Qingge said that, Ye Wuxiang stared at her thoughtfully. After a while she said, "You're leaving?" She came out of closed-door meditation to say goodbye to Ye Wuxiang. It had been more than 10 years since she left the celestial pole. It was time to go back. Ye Wuxiang didn't feel surprised, but she still felt a vague sense of loss. She sighed and said, "You're right. You're different from me. No matter how far you go, you still have to go back." Mo Qingge heard the melancholy in her voice, but she couldn't comfort her about this kind of thing. Although her character was compatible with Ye Wuxiang's, their life trajectories were completely different. In the celestial pole, she had a master, a partner, and relatives. No matter how far she was, she still had to go back. That was her route. But Ye Wuxiang was the opposite. She absolutely couldn't go back to the celestial pole. In Yunzhong she had no relatives or friends. She was like a floating duckweed. The only thing that kept her going was her determination to keep cultivating. Cultivators were also people. They were more indifferent to worldly emotions than mortals, but they couldn't completely abandon them. "Maybe I'll come to Yunzhong again in a few years. At that time we'll still have a chance to see each other." After a long time, Mo Qingge only said this. Ye Wuxiang smiled, threw her sad mood to the back of her mind and asked, "What's your next plan?" "I'll go to Ling Yunhe to get the reward first. If things go smoothly, I'll go back to the celestial pole." Mo Qingge didn't have anything to hide, so she told her frankly. "Right, I forgot that Ling Yunhe still owes us a debt." Ye Wuxiang smiled then sighed softly. "Unfortunately, I can't use the reward he promised me now." Mo Qingge never asked about this matter, so she couldn't help but feel curious. "Back then, when you accepted Ling Yunhe's invitation, what reward did you ask for?" "A sacred exorcism object." Nie Wuxiang didn't hesitate and told her directly. She then shook her head and smiled bitterly. At that time when I made this request, Ling Yunhe was very embarrassed. If he wasn't pressed for time and urgently needed help, I'm afraid he wouldn't have given it to me. But it's useless to me now even if I have it. She was already a devil cultivator now, and the primordial devil aura in her body directly occupied her meridians and dantian. It was simply impossible to use a devil exorcism object to remove the devil aura from her body. If she persisted, her cultivation level would most likely be crippled. So you're not going to go? I reckon I'll have to enter closed-door meditation for at least 10 years. Nie Wuxiang thought for a while then said, how about this? If you see Ling Yunhe, tell him for me that the thing he promised me is already dispensable to me. If this thing is very important to him, then he can use something else to replace it. I don't expect it to be more precious than this sacred object. It's fine as long as he doesn't renege on his debt. If I come out of closed-door meditation, I'll go look for him. All right, Mo Tiange readily agreed. It was just a message, so it wasn't a big deal. Nie Wuxiang looked at her with a complicated expression for a long time before she finally said, I hope we're fated to meet again. After a long time, Mo Tiange smiled. Rest assured. If I form my nascent soul in the future, I'll definitely come to Yunzhong to look for you. Chapter 422. The restaurant in Guifang City was no different from the restaurants in the Righteous Path's Immortal Cultivation City. It was also a bustling crowd of low-level cultivators, all of whom were chatting and laughing loudly, exchanging information. For most of the low-level cultivators, they couldn't enter the mountain gate, couldn't get in touch with those high-level cultivators, and couldn't get pointers. Therefore, they valued the communication between cultivators more. They could get other cultivation information from cultivators of the same level and exchange what they needed. A immortal cultivation city needed the strength of high-level cultivators, but it also needed these low-level cultivators to be popular. Only then could it prosper. Very welcome. Please take a seat here. In the restaurant, the waiter who specialized in receiving cultivators warmly greeted a female cultivator who just stepped into the restaurant and led her to a seat. Although this waiter was a mortal, he had been in the outside world for a long time, so he had a good eye. When he saw this female cultivator's appearance, he knew she was a cultivator of the righteous path. He asked eagerly, Fairy, what do you want? We have good spiritual tea, spiritual wine brewed from spiritual fruits, and dishes cooked from spiritual beasts. A pot of tea and a few plates of dried fruits will do. The female cultivator replied lightly. Yes, yes, please wait a moment. The waiter bowed repeatedly. After a while he served the spiritual tea and dried fruits. Fairy, please enjoy. If you need anything, just call me. The female cultivator nodded, picked up the spiritual tea and took a sip. However, she frowned slightly as if she was not satisfied with this spiritual tea. In the infernal domain, how could a restaurant that served ordinary low-level cultivators have any good spirit tea? This restaurant was actually quite famous in Guifang City. However, in the early morning, the seats on the second floor, which was specially used to receive cultivators, were already 70% full. Seeing this female cultivator come in, the other cultivators more or less shifted their gaze to her for a while. They acted like this because there were not many female cultivators among the rogue cultivators. Moreover, this was the devil domain and this female cultivator was a Dao cultivator. Secondly, this female cultivator's aura was not strong, but they couldn't feel her real cultivation. It was really strange. However, no matter how they looked, this female cultivator was still quietly drinking tea by herself. She lowered her head and looked at the table as if she didn't care about the surroundings. Seeing this, the surrounding cultivators quickly resumed their conversation. Although there weren't many low-level cultivators in the demon domain, it wasn't as if there weren't any. In this restaurant alone, there were 3 to 5 of them, which wasn't considered rare. Besides, low-level cultivators like them were busy cultivating every day. How could they have the time to care about other people's business? This female cultivator was naturally Mo Tiange. After a simple farewell to Nie Wuxiang, she packed up her things and left the temporary cave. She had not appeared in the human world for several years. Looking at the bustling Guifang city, she could not help but want to sit in the crowd and feel the aura of the mortal world. Cultivation was a lonely thing. The higher one's cultivation, the more lonely it was. He shut himself in the abode and cultivated day and night, painstakingly comprehending the profundities. In the blink of an eye, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years passed just like that. If one didn't have a firm Tao heart, how could one persevere? Even if Mo Chenga admitted she was willing to be lonely, it was inevitable that she would feel dull and lonely after being in closed-door meditation for a long time. After sitting leisurely for a while, several cultivators of the righteous path came to strike up a conversation with her. However, Mo Chenga was not in the mood to chat with them today, so she only said a few words. Seeing that she was not in the mood to chat, the others sensibly didn't disturb her. The restaurant was quite noisy. 4 low-level cultivators without a sect, communicating with cultivators in the same realm was their source of information. Although they might not be prepared for what they said, Mo Chenga was very happy to hear it. While she was listening to some gossip with relish, she suddenly heard a devil cultivator at the table next to her say, "Fellow Taoists, before I came to Guifang City, I heard there were many cultivators with profound cultivation levels in Guifang City. I've been here for a month, but why haven't I seen a senior in the core formation realm?" This cultivator's question might be very strange in other places. How could it be so easy to see a core formation cultivator? But in Guifang City, it wasn't strange at all. Guifang City was one of the biggest devil territories. Not only were there many core formation cultivators under Guifang Devil Monarch, but there were also many cultivators who settled in Guifang City. Although low-level cultivators like them couldn't chat with them, they had many opportunities to meet them. There were 2 people sitting at the same table with this devil cultivator. One was a youth with a knife scar on his face, and the other was a skinny old man. Upon hearing this question, the old man still drank his tea with relish, but the other youth immediately smiled and said, "Brother Yin, there's something you don't know. If you came to Guifang City on a normal day, it would be very easy for you to see a core formation senior. But now the timing isn't right. Not to mention our Guifang City, I'm afraid the core formation seniors from other devil territories aren't in the city." Oh. The devil cultivator called Brother Yen was surprised. What timing? Did something big happen? Something big, something really big. The knife-scarred youth shook the wine cup in his hand, ate a mouthful of dishes cooked by demonic beasts, then said, "Brother Yen, I presume you haven't been to this kind of place recently, right? Not to mention our Guifang City, there's practically no devil cultivator who doesn't know about this matter." Mo Chenga, who inadvertently overheard this, couldn't help but prick up her ears. Something big happened in the devil cultivator world? What kind of thing could it be that involved so many core formation cultivators? Fellow Taoist Duan, don't keep me guessing. What's the matter? I'm always impatient. Hee hee. The knife-scarred youth chuckled. Now that he had aroused devil cultivator Yan's curiosity, he said, "Brother Yin, have you ever heard of a magic weapon called Heavenly Devil Tower?" Heavenly Devil Tower? What's that? Judging from his tone, it seems to be an extraordinary magic weapon. Mo Chenga, who didn't know much about Yunzhong, was full of doubts. Heavenly Devil Tower? Devil cultivator Yen repeated. At first, his expression was blank, but it soon turned red, and excitement appeared on his face. Heavenly Devil Tower. Tens of thousands of years ago, the most powerful magic weapon of devil paths, Heavenly Devil Venerable, the Heavenly Devil Tower. Correct. The knife-scarred youth was very satisfied that devil cultivator Yen managed to guess it right away. Aside from this Heavenly Devil Tower, what else could make those arrogant seniors care so much about it? The youth didn't finish his sentence, so devil cultivator Yen hastily asked, "What's going on? Fellow Taoist Duan, just tell me." "Let this old man tell you." The old man who hadn't spoken until now finally spoke. His cultivation level was slightly higher than the other 2. He was already in the 10th layer of the aura refining realm. Judging from his age, he must have had a lot of experience. His eyes shone brightly, and it was obvious he was a shrewd person. "We have to start from 2 years ago," the old man said slowly. "About 2 years ago, not only in our Guifang City, but in the entire devil cultivator world, the rumor of the Heavenly Devil Tower's reappearance spread. Fellow Taoist Yen, you know what kind of treasure the Heavenly Devil Tower is. We devil cultivators worship powerful cultivators the most, and Devil Path's Heavenly Devil Venerable was undoubtedly the most powerful devil cultivator in Yunzhong's history. The Heavenly Devil Tower in his hands was created by gathering the power of the 10 most powerful devil monarchs of the Devil Path and refining all kinds of Devil Path supreme treasures. It could be said to be the #1 magic weapon of our Devil Path, so it's also known as the Devil Path's sacred object." The old man roughly explained the origin of the Heavenly Devil Tower, which happened to resolve Mo Chenga's doubts. She had heard of Devil Venerable Sky, but she wasn't very interested in matters related to devil cultivators. She only knew that this person was publicly recognized as the strongest devil path cultivator in Yunzhong. Although he had disappeared for several tens of thousands of years, his prestige still lingered in Yunzhong. Moreover, he was the only devil path cultivator who was given the title of Devil Venerable. Judging from the old man's words, this heavenly devil tower was the most powerful magic weapon in Devil Venerable Sky's hands, and it was also known as the Devil Path's sacred object, so it should be very extraordinary. However, this Devil Venerable Sky had disappeared for several tens of thousands of years. Was this magic weapon still in good condition? As this thought crossed her mind, Mo Qinga once again recalled the Fuxing sword she accidentally obtained a few years ago. Fu Yaozi was also a cultivator from several tens of thousands of years ago. This magic weapon of his had been corroded in the devil domain for several tens of thousands of years, but it still had that kind of power. If this heavenly devil tower had been properly preserved in a specific place, it really might be in good condition. All of us aura refining cultivators heard about this, so we all thought it was just groundless rumors. Otherwise, how could we possibly know about this kind of news? Who knew that several months ago the high-level seniors of our Guifang city went out one after another? Only then did we find out that this wasn't just a rumor. Right now, almost all the seniors in the devil cultivation world above the core formation realm are searching for this sacred object. Oh, so that's how it is. The devil cultivator surnamed Yen clicked his tongue in wonder. Legend has it that after the devil venerable successfully advanced to the divine transformation realm, he disappeared from the world, and the heavenly devil tower also disappeared at the same time. It's been several tens of thousands of years, but this devil path sacred object has actually reappeared in the world? This is too miraculous. Who said it wasn't? The knife-scarred youth said while eating a dried fruit. Unfortunately, our cultivation levels are too low. Even if the sacred object appears in the world, it has nothing to do with us. Alas, if it was several hundred years later. Even if it was several hundred years later, you still might not be able to form your gold core. Even if you formed your gold core, I'm afraid you still wouldn't be able to snatch this sacred object. The old man slowly nibbled on peanuts and said, "This time, although all the core formation seniors went out, in my opinion, only the 3 great devil monarchs will be able to join in the fight." The knife-scarred youth nodded in agreement. Yes. Not to mention the core formation seniors, even those nascent soul seniors with slightly weaker strength probably won't have a chance. The sacred object of our devil path will naturally fall into the hands of the strongest devil cultivators. Other people will just watch the fun. Correct. I hope our city lord can snatch the sacred object. That way, our Guifang city will become the #1 devil domain in the future. At that time, small cultivators like us will also have a lot of benefits. These devil cultivators continued to talk for a while before they changed the topic to something else. The appearance of the devil path's sacred object was naturally an extraordinary event for the entire devil cultivation world, but for small cultivators like them, it was nothing more than gossip. Mo Qinga muttered to herself for a while before she called the waiter, paid the bill and left the restaurant. On the surface, this matter seemed to have nothing to do with her. However, if she thought about it carefully, it might not necessarily be the case. The appearance of the devil path's sacred object caused turmoil in the entire devil cultivation world. In Yunzhong, although cultivators from different realms had their own countries, they all lived together. Once the devil path was in turmoil, the 3 realms of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism would also be in turmoil. It seemed she had to quickly finish her business and leave Yunzhong. Chapter 423. After leaving Guifang City and Northern Lin Country in a hurry, Mo Qinga entered the sphere of influence of Juyin sect a few days later. The northern part of eastern Tang, because it was close to Northern Lin Country, had barren mountains and wild rivers and was very desolate. Not even a few villages could be seen. When she got close to Juyin sect, there were more people. After entering Juyin sect's sphere of influence, there were even more towns and cities everywhere. Among the 5 major sects of eastern Tang, Juyin sect and Danxia sect were located in the north, one in the east and the other in the west. Because of the existence of these 2 sects, the surrounding area was very prosperous. Cultivation cities were everywhere, and it was many times more prosperous than the celestial pole. Along the way, Mo Qinga randomly picked a cultivation town to stay, but she found that the turmoil of Devil Path had already affected all parts of Yunzhong. Once a powerful devil cultivator obtained the sacred object of Devil Path, his strength would soar. Although the cultivators of Yunzhong coexisted peacefully, they were also in a delicate balance. If the strength of Devil Path cultivators skyrocketed, especially figures like the 3 devil monarchs, the situation in Yunzhong would certainly change. Therefore, when the sacred object of Devil Path appeared, not only did it set off a great uproar in the world of Devil Path, but other Taoist cultivators, Confucian cultivators and Buddhist cultivators were also involved. When she returned to Eastern Tang at this time, there were almost no high-level cultivators left in the 5 major cultivation sections. Basically all of them went out in full force. The disturbance caused by this matter in Eastern Tang was far greater than that in Guifang City. This was the sacred object of Devil Path. Devil cultivators went to fight for it for their own interests, but Taoist cultivators felt a sense of crisis. Taoist cultivators were used to them being the most numerous and powerful cultivators in Yunzhong. This time, it was possible for devil cultivators to get the sacred object of Devil Venerable. How could this be? Although Devil Venerable was powerful and had outstanding figures like the 10 Devil Monarchs, Taoist cultivators also had geniuses like Senior Fu Yaozi and other promising cultivators. The strength of Taoist cultivators was not weak at all. After so many years, although Taoist and Devil Path were no longer hostile, they were still unwilling to let devil cultivators steal the limelight and dominate Taoist cultivators. As for Buddhist cultivators and Confucian cultivators, they also belonged to the righteous path. It was not good for them if devil cultivators were strong, so they naturally stood on the side of Taoist cultivators. Mo Qingge couldn't help but sigh. She really didn't expect that the situation in Yunzhong would change in such a way in just a few years of seclusion. As a result, the things she wanted to do had changed again. A few years ago, Ling Yunhe promised to help her obtain the complete version of the art of Sunu. He said he'd only think of a way to get it for her, but he didn't say how long it would take or whether he'd directly give it to her. Moreover, regardless of whether Ling Yunhe had become the sect leader of Juyin sect or not, with almost all the sects mobilized, he would most likely be dragged into this matter as well. It was unknown whether he was in Juyin sect at the moment. After pondering for a while, Mo Qingge felt it was useless to think too much about it. She might as well go directly to the Ling clan in Sky Snow City to take a look and then decide what to do next. After making up her mind, she traveled day and night without stopping to rest. Soon she arrived at Sky Snow City. She went to the Ling clan with familiarity. Coincidentally, the person who received her was the cultivator who called Ling Yunhe's second uncle, Xiaoshen. However, after 10 years, Xiaoshen had already successfully built his foundation and became a foundation-building cultivator. "Senior, it's you." Xiaoshen opened his mouth in surprise when he saw Mo Qingge being led in by the gatekeeper. Mo Qingge swept her gaze over him and immediately found that things were different now. Xiaoshen had advanced to the foundation-building realm, so his dressing and bearing were completely different from the low-level cultivator he used to be. She smiled and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years. Turns out you've successfully built your foundation. Congratulations." Xiaoshen scratched his head embarrassedly and hastily asked Mo Qingge to sit down. "Senior, please sit. The core formation elders of the Ling clan are all busy right now. Please forgive me for not being a good host." Mo Qingge waved her hand indifferently. "I know. The appearance of the sacred object of the Devil Path has affected the whole of Yunzhong. In fact, for a big clan like the Ling clan, even if a core formation cultivator came to visit, it would be enough for a foundation-building cultivator to receive them before the reason was stated. It wouldn't be considered rude. Besides, the current situation was special. According to her estimation, the Ling clan's nascent soul ancestor was most likely chasing after the Devil Realm's sacred object. There were probably only a few core formation cultivators left in the Ling clan, and they were probably all busy and didn't have time to receive her. Seeing that Mo Qingge didn't mind, Xiaoshen sighed in relief and said apologetically, "Since Senior knows the reason, I won't explain much." The servants of the Ling clan were all well trained. At this time they had already served tea quickly. After Mo Qingge drank the tea, Xiaoshen said, "Senior, did you come to look for second uncle?" Mo Qingge put down the teacup and nodded. "Yes, but I wonder if fellow Taoist Ling is in the manor or inside Juyin sect." Xiaoshen shook his head and said apologetically, "Unfortunately, second uncle went out with the ancestor several months ago. I don't know when he'll come back." Mo Qingge was stunned for a moment before she sighed. "I guessed fellow Taoist Ling probably couldn't avoid the matter of the Devil Path's sacred object. I just came to ask with the slightest hope. Senior doesn't have to be so disappointed." Xiaoshen smiled and said, "Although second uncle isn't here, Junior has already been informed about Senior's matter." Mo Qingge was slightly happy. In that case she didn't come here in vain. "May I know what fellow Taoist Ling said?" Xiaoshen said, "Second uncle said that Senior has already prepared your reward. However, this matter is very important, so it's inconvenient to tell him. He asked him to personally hand it over to you when he comes back. Mo Chenga was stunned. Is that so? What she wanted was the complete art of Sunu, including cultivation techniques for those in the nascent soul realm and above. Moreover, this thing was a treasure of Danxia sect, so it wasn't wrong to be so cautious. However, the emergence of the Devil Path's sacred object this time would involve a lot of cultivators. She could imagine the chaos that would ensue. How could Ling Yunhe guarantee that he'd come back alive and fulfill his promise? If Ling Yunhe died on this trip, wouldn't that mean she wouldn't be able to get it? After hesitating for a while, Mo Chenga asked, "Can you contact him now?" Xiaoshen hesitated for a moment before answering, "Junior can't. However, second uncle also told me that if senior really wants to come and look for him during this period of time, junior can tell senior where to find second uncle." Mo Chenga was a bit surprised. Although she knew most of the core formation cultivators in Yunzhong were involved in this matter, she never thought about asking about their whereabouts because this kind of matter was definitely a secret that couldn't be passed on. But now, from what Xiaoshen said, it seemed he could tell her? Mo Chenga pondered for a moment then asked, "Isn't this matter the sect's secret? Why can you tell me?" Xiaoshen smiled and shook his head. "Senior, it's true that this matter is confidential, but how could it be confidential when almost all the high-level cultivators in Yunzhong were involved? Senior is also a core formation cultivator, so if you really want to know, you still have a way to inquire about it. That being the case, what's wrong with me telling Senior?" What he said was true. With more people involved, even the most confidential matter wouldn't be confidential anymore. Mo Chenga smiled then asked, "Then tell me, where can I find him?" Xiaoshen smiled and looked at her. He only said 3 words, "Returning Ruins C." Mo Chenga was startled and frowned. "Returning Ruins C?" "Correct." Xiaoshen took out a map made of animal skin from his robe and spread it on the tea table. This was a simple map of Yunzhong. Only the outline of Yunzhong's continent was drawn, but the internal sea was extremely detailed. Every island and every part of the sea was clearly shown. "Senior, if you want to find second uncle, you should go to this island." Mo Chenga looked at the island next to the returning ruins sea Xiaoshen pointed at and asked, "Where is he?" Xiaoshen shook his head. "It's just that second uncle told me to do so. In Junior's opinion, Senior's chances of running into second uncle here aren't high." Mo Chenga was silent. This island was obviously a place where Juyin sect cultivators passed by. Ling Yunhe had something to do and it was a big matter that involved the whole sect, so how could he wait for her here? Besides, he also didn't know she would really come to the Ling clan at this time. Therefore this was only a possibility. She thought for a while then asked, "What if things went smoothly? Did he say when he would come back?" Xiaoshen was silent for a while then shook his head softly with a melancholy expression. "I don't know. Since Senior already knows what happened, you must also understand that this is a great turmoil that affects the whole of Yunzhong. No one knows whether Senior can come back alive or not." Mo Chenga was silent for a while then pointed at the map on the tea table. "Can you give this to me?" Xiaoshen regained his composure and said with a smile, "Of course." He then rolled up the map and offered it with both hands. Mo Chenga accepted it then said, "Thank you for passing the message, but I haven't decided whether to go or not. How about this? If fellow Taoist Ling comes back and I haven't gone to look for him, please tell him I'll find a suitable time to visit him." Xiaoshen nodded with a smile. "I'll definitely pass on Senior's message." Mo Chenga said, "Fellow Taoist Tian can also ask me to pass on a message. Right now she has something important to do, so the time of her visit is uncertain. Maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 to 20 years. When she's free she'll come to look for him." Xiaoshen nodded cautiously. "I understand." Mo Chenga hesitated for a while, but in the end she didn't tell Xiaoshen about exchanging the reward. This matter was too secretive. She'd better tell him when she saw Ling Yunhe. Even if she didn't pass on the message, Nie Wuxiang could still tell him herself. After she finished telling him about the main matter, Mo Chenga wasn't in a hurry to leave. She chatted with Xiaoshen and asked him about what happened that year. After obtaining the carefree fruit, Ling Yunhe successfully seized the position of Juyin sect's head. When he came back with injuries, Ling clan's nascent soul ancestor was furious. Afterward, Juyin sect was in turmoil. After a series of struggles, Ling Yunhe successfully succeeded the position of sect head, and this matter finally came to an end. Although Xiaoshen didn't explain this matter very clearly, Mo Chenga could guess it must have something to do with Ling Yunfei. Back then Ling Yunfei was a disciple of Ling clan, but he plotted against Ling Yunhe, so he must have something to rely on. And this reliance definitely wasn't Ling clan's ancestor. With this inference, it would be strange if Ling Yunhe didn't get angry. His own core formation descendant was actually bribed by someone else. How could he tolerate it? It could be said that Ling Yunhe's ascension to the position of sect head was a sign that one of Juyin sect's factions was losing power. Of course, this was Juyin sect's internal affairs. Mo Qingge only asked about it briefly and didn't express too much curiosity. For her, the problem now was whether she should look for Ling Yunhe and settle this matter as soon as possible or stay out of it and wait here. Chapter 424. The turmoil caused by the sacred object of the demonic path was even beyond Mo Qingge's imagination. After leaving the Ling clan, she didn't immediately go to the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for Ling Yunhe. Instead, she temporarily settled down in Sky Snow City. During this time, she saw many core formation cultivators passing through Sky Snow City and hurrying south. Some of these cultivators were in groups while some were alone. There were probably cultivators from both sects and individual cultivators. It seemed that this sacred object of the demonic path was extremely important to the cultivators in Yunzhong. Realizing this, Mo Qingge had to inquire about some information. She was puzzled. No matter how powerful this sacred object of the demonic path was, it was only a magic weapon. There was no lack of powerful cultivators in Yunzhong, so why did they all flock to this magic weapon? She didn't understand until she went to the tea house in Sky Snow City. Aura refining and foundation building cultivators couldn't intervene in such a big matter, but that didn't stop them from talking excitedly. From these people, Mo Qingge learned that there were some ancient legends circulating in Yunzhong. 100,000 years ago was the most prosperous period of the cultivation world in Yunzhong. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, they all produced talented people and prospered. At that time, several legendary figures appeared among the cultivators of each path. The first was Fu Yaozi, the second was Sky Luminous Demon Venerable, the third was Juyin sect's founder Saint Guizhen, the fourth was Confucian Saint Zhou Fuzi, and the fifth was Buddhist Master Huiyin. These 5 figures were no more than 1,000 years apart in age and were people of the same generation. Because they were far more powerful than their peers, they were called the 5 saints by the cultivators in Yunzhong. Among the 5 saints, Fu Yaozi was the most unique one. He didn't belong to any sect, but he was so powerful that he was still called the number 1 person in Yunzhong's history. The other 4 were representatives of the demonic path, Taoist path, Confucian path, and Buddhist path. Each of them had disciples. There were also rumors about the 5 saints in Yunzhong. It was said that the 5 saints all advanced to the soul formation realm and left the world. Before they left, they each left treasures in the world. These were the 5 sacred objects in Yunzhong. Among these 5 sacred objects, Sky Luminous Demon Venerable naturally had the Heavenly Demon Tower and Master Huiyin's inescapable net. As for the other 3, people only knew they had treasures but didn't know their names. However, other than Fu Yaozi, Saint Guizhen, Master Zhou, and Master Huiyin all had disciples that were passed down from generation to generation. It was highly likely that they were in the hands of their disciples. As for the Sky Luminous Demon Exalted, after he passed away, the 10 demon monarchs were suppressed by Fu Yaozi alone, and the Heavenly Demon Tower eventually disappeared. Because of this, after so many years, although there was no lack of nascent soul cultivators in the Devil Dao, they were all suppressed by the other Daos. Mo Qingge left the tea house and sat inside the virtual sky world, lost in thought. Inescapable net, why did it sound so familiar? After thinking for a while, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. 10 years ago, when she first arrived at Sky Snow City, she was robbed by 2 foundation-building cultivators. At that time, she casually took their magic weapon into her pocket. That magic weapon was called the inescapable net by them. With this thought in mind, Mo Qingge put her hand into her Qingquan bag. After fumbling around for a long time, she finally took out a golden net. It was unknown what the net was made of, but it was completely golden and light as if it was weightless. It was also infused with a strange spiritual energy. After looking at it for a while, Mo Qingge couldn't see anything unusual about it. Treasures always had an imposing manner. For example, the Fuxing sword she obtained. Although it had been corroded by devil aura and was covered in rust, it was still shockingly powerful. However, she couldn't see any power from the golden net in front of her. If there was anything unusual about it, it would be that it looked extremely exquisite and the spiritual energy on it was something she still couldn't see through with her cultivation level. She carefully recalled what happened 10 years ago. One of the 2 people died under her hands, and the other one she found pleasing to the eye, so she let him go. That person once admitted that they were indeed Buddhist cultivators. But the problem was, they were only two foundation-building cultivators, so how could they possibly have a Buddhist holy object? A Devil Dao holy object was enough to make all of Yunzhong restless, so a Buddhist holy object should be kept in the hands of a great Buddhist cultivator. Could it be that this thing was an imitation of the real inescapable net? This wasn't impossible. Many famous psychic magic weapons had imitations in the world. For example, the square seal in her hand was actually made by Lord Taoist Jinghe based on Lord Taoist Jinyang's natal magic weapon. Therefore, although it couldn't be considered a top-grade magic weapon, it was still very powerful. After thinking for a while, Mo Qianga still couldn't think of a reason, so she shook her head and put the golden net back into her Chengkuan bag. She wasn't a cultivator from Yunzhong, so even if this matter made all the cultivators in Yunzhong crazy, she wouldn't feel excited at all. There were so many high-level cultivators, including many late-stage nascent soul cultivators with great divine power. Even if she went there, she would only be watching the fun. Besides, she didn't covet the Devil Dao's holy object. Just like that, she stayed in Sky Snow City for another month. During this time, rumors spread like wildfire in Sky Snow City. Rumors spread like wildfire in the tea houses, but no one knew whether it was true or false. Cultivators of various paths fought each other in the Sea of Returning Ruins, and more than half of them died or were injured. They found a spatial crack in the Sea of Returning Ruins. They said the Heavenly Devil Tower had actually fallen into someone else's hands. The news was very messy. Mo Qianga was confused, so she simply found a time to go see Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan was very enthusiastic about her visit and told her everything he knew about the matter. From Xiaoshan, Mo Qianga heard another version of the legend. Senior, although the legend of the five saints has been circulating in Yunzhong for a long time, it's been several tens of thousands of years, and there are many mistakes in it. Even disciples of the five saints like us can't tell whether it's true or false. Hearing Xiaoshan's words, Mo Qianga said, "So what I heard should be false?" Xiaoshan hesitated for a while, then shook his head. "It's not completely false. The five saints themselves and the five holy objects they left behind should all be true. But there were others that were fake. For example, only Demon Venerable Skylight and Fu Yaozi can be confirmed to have reached the deification realm. The others, including our Jiyan sect's Saint Gui Zhen, are only rumored to have reached the deification realm. As for whether they've reached the deification realm or not, we the descendants don't know." Mo Qianga was surprised. "Why is that? Saint Gui Zhen is the founder of your sect. Don't tell me there's no record of him in the sect?" Xiaoshan shook his head. "It's been too long. How could I remember it in such detail? Besides, I'm just an ordinary disciple. Although I'm favored by second uncle and know a bit more than others, there are some things that a disciple like me can't know." Mo Qianga found it reasonable, so she nodded. There were some secrets that only a few people could know. If other people's ranks weren't high enough, they wouldn't know no matter how close they were. However, there's one thing we can be sure of. The five saints did pass down a set of magic weapons with amazing divine powers, Xiaoshan said. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, "Senior, I can't be sure if the following things are true or false. They're just rumors I heard in the sect. If they're wrong, don't blame me." Mo Qianga smiled and said, "How can you be sure there's nothing wrong with what happened 100,000 years ago? You don't need to worry. I was the one who wanted to ask you for information, so how could I blame you?" When Xiaoshan heard this, he smiled and scratched his head in embarrassment. Although these things couldn't be regarded as the sect's secrets, he was willing to talk about them because this Senior Qin was good-natured and they got along very well. Senior must want to know why the five saints passed down their magic weapons together, right? Xiaoshan said. Mo Qianga nodded. "That's exactly what I don't understand. It was normal to pass down magic weapons to later generations, but why did the rumors emphasize an extremely powerful magic weapon, and called a holy object? It was indeed a bit unusual to call five magic weapons a holy object." Xiaoshan said, "Regarding this matter, this junior has heard of another saying in the sect." Xiaoshan then began to explain slowly. It was said that 100,000 years ago, after a tsunami in the Sea of Returning Ruins, a spatial rift suddenly appeared. Through this spatial rift, one could enter a wonderful space. No one knew when this space had been left behind, but it was filled with the aura of the distant past and was extremely wonderful. The appearance of such a space naturally attracted the attention of cultivators. Almost all the cultivators in Yunzhong were involved in it. After a struggle, the ones who finally entered this space were the five top cultivators, the five saints. As for what the five saints obtained in this space, no one knew. After they returned, they kept this experience a secret. Even their closest disciples didn't know about it. After the 5 saints passed away, there was a secret rumor among the cultivators in Yunzhong that the 5 saints obtained a distant past spiritual treasure, so they rushed into the deification realm in one fell swoop. Of course, this was only a rumor. What the 5 saints obtained in this wonderful place was all speculation. After the 5 saints left, no one could find this space again. Some people said that this spatial rift was originally unstable, so after the 5 saints came out, it collapsed on its own. Some people also said the 5 saints hid it. Which is the answer? Does Senior want to guess? At this point, Xiaoshen looked at Mo Chenga with a meaningful smile. Seeing his expression, Mo Chenga smiled faintly and said, "Of course it's the second one. Otherwise, why would you mention these 5 holy artifacts?" Xiaoshen nodded. Correct. Among our group, it's the second answer. The 5 saints worked together to seal this wonderful space. Unless one knows the method to open it, no one can enter. At this point, he looked at Mo Chenga. Senior should have guessed it, right? The 5 magic weapons left behind are said to be the keys to this mysterious space. I see. If this was the case, it could explain why the 5 saints passed down these 5 holy artifacts. In fact, whether they were powerful or not was secondary. What was important was that these 5 holy artifacts could open that wonderful space. However, Xiaoshen emphasized, this matter is only a rumor. As for what the truth is, no one knows for a long time. Even if someone knows, there's no way to prove it. Because aside from the Heavenly Demon Tower and the inescapable net, only a few people know what the other 3 holy artifacts are. Oh? Could it be that you also don't know what your Juyin sect's founder passed down? I don't know. Xiaoshen shook his head decisively. Therefore, whether this rumor is true or false, Junior also doesn't know. Senior should just take it as gossip and listen to it. Mo Chenga nodded to show that she understood. She then said, in that case, the reason why so many cultivators from Yunzhong rushed to the Heavenly Demon Tower wasn't only because they were afraid devil cultivators would obtain it and greatly increase their power, but also because of this rumor? Probably. Xiaoshen didn't give a definite answer. I don't know about the rumors in other cultivation groups. Mo Chenga thought for a while, then stood up with a smile. I understand. Thank you for telling me this. Whether it's true or false, I'll just take it as an interesting story. Chapter 425. After hearing about the 5 saints from Xiaoshen, Mo Chenga reconsidered her decision. Obviously, the storm caused by the Heavenly Demon Tower couldn't be quelled in a short time. These days, she found that more and more cultivators went to returning Ruin Sea in Sky Snow City. Not only cultivators in the core formation realm and above, but also foundation building and ore refining cultivators. Although they knew they had no hope, they couldn't help but go and watch the fun. Maybe they could really get something good. Seeing that Yunzhong was turning upside down, Mo Chenga felt more and more uneasy. Although the returning Ruin Sea was located to the south of Yunzhong, tens of thousands of miles away from here, and no matter how fierce the battle was, it wouldn't affect Sky Snow City, but with so many cultivators involved, it was a sign of great turmoil. After all, those cultivators in returning Ruin Sea would eventually return to their respective cultivation groups. How could they let go of the enmity they formed in returning Ruin Sea? If a fight really broke out, the whole of Yunzhong would be involved. Thinking of this, Mo Chenga raised her eyebrows. She didn't covet any sacred object, and she only stayed in the clouds because she wanted to finish what she had to do. But in the current situation, if she stayed in the clouds for too long, she would probably be involuntarily dragged into it. What should I do? It wasn't a good idea to look for the cloud-soaring crane. Returning Ruin Sea was now a troublesome place. Should I wait here? Unless she closed her door and wholeheartedly cultivated, once Yunzhong was in chaos, it would be very troublesome for her. Besides, she had a hunch that since the Heavenly Demon Tower appeared, what about the other holy relic? If she wasn't careful, the turmoil brought by these holy relic might affect Yunzhong for years, decades, or even centuries. If that was the case, there was no need for her to stay in Yunzhong anymore. After a short consideration, Mo Chenga finally decided to give up on the art of Sunu and return to the Celestial Pole. She had already gone through the passage between the Celestial Pole and Yunzhong once, so it wouldn't be difficult to go through it again. She just needed to spend a little more time, and that half a year wasn't a long time for cultivators. That being the case, why should she stay in Yunzhong and waste time? Since he couldn't obtain the art of Sunu in such a short time, he might as well return to the Celestial Pole and come back after 10 or 20 years. Once she made up her mind, she acted. The next day, Mo Tiange sent a message to Xiaoshun, saying she had other important matters to attend to and had to leave for a while. It might be a long time before she came back. She told Xiaoshun to tell Ling Yunhe that she would take advantage of the transporting formation to directly go to North Pole Island. Yunzhong's teleportation formation was very common, but it was only available in large cities like Sky Snow City, where people came and went. In the past few days, there had been a continuous stream of people being teleported to the big cities in the south, but the North Pole Island's transporting formation, which used to be bustling with activity, was now empty. Upon hearing that Mo Tiange wasn't going to a big city in the south, the cultivator guarding the transporting formation was very surprised. However, due to his limited cultivation level, he didn't dare to ask too much. After Mo Tiange paid the fee, he respectfully activated the transporting formation and sent her away. The transporting formation was activated. A moment later, the light dispersed. When Mo Tiange opened her eyes, she was already inside Tianyan Sec's Jade Qilin Pavilion on North Pole Island. Seeing that it was a core formation cultivator who came down from the teleportation array, the cultivator guarding the teleportation array was very surprised. The leading foundation building cultivator hesitated for a moment before he stepped forward to greet her. "Senior, welcome to North Pole Island." Since the other party was so polite, Mo Tiange also smiled and nodded in response. Seeing her kind attitude, this person also had a good impression of her. He asked politely, "May I ask if this is Senior's first time coming to North Pole Island? Are you hunting demonic beasts or visiting friends? If there's anything I can help you with, please don't hesitate to ask." Mo Tiange shook her head softly. "I've been to North Pole Island before, so there's no need to do this." "I see." Junior was too meddlesome. The foundation building cultivator said, but he still didn't retreat. After a moment of hesitation, he summoned up his courage and asked, "Please forgive Junior for being rude, but in recent months, very few cultivators have come to North Pole Island, let alone a core formation cultivator like Senior. Why did Senior choose to come at this time?" Seeing Mo Tiange raising her brows, seemingly displeased, the foundation building cultivator hastily said, "Junior was just curious. If Senior finds it inconvenient, you can just pretend I didn't ask." It wasn't convenient for Mo Tiange to tell others the purpose of her trip. Since this foundation building cultivator was tactful, she didn't say much. She only said, "It's indeed inconvenient to say. Can I leave now?" The foundation building cultivator hastily took a step back. "Of course. Senior, please do as you please." Mo Tiange didn't say much and left Jade Qilin Pavilion. When her figure disappeared, the aura refining girl following the foundation building cultivator asked curiously, "Master, most of the core formation grandmasters in our group have gone to returning Ruin Sea, so why did this Senior come to North Pole Island?" The foundation building cultivator stared at the place where Mo Tiange's figure disappeared. He shook his head and said, "It's precisely because of this that I feel this Senior is a smart person." The girl was puzzled. "What?" The foundation building cultivator looked at his young disciple and said with a smile, "Think about it. With so many high-level seniors rushing to returning Ruin Sea, how many of them are in the late stage of the nascent soul realm? In the end, the ones who get what they want are only those top cultivators. Core formation cultivators won't get any benefits unless they're extremely lucky. The biggest possibility is that not only will they not get any benefits, but they'll also suffer losses." The girl suddenly understood. "So it's because of this that the ones staying in our group are all young and promising core formation grandmasters?" The foundation building cultivator nodded. The girl tilted her head and said doubtfully, "That being the case, why do the two nascent soul grandmasters want to take those core formation grandmasters with them? Wouldn't it be better if we didn't care about this matter?" The foundation building cultivator shook his head and said with a smile, "Everything in the world can be measured by benefits. For the sake of benefits, we naturally have to take big risks. Think about it, the 5 sacred objects left by the 5 sages are related to that legend. Advancing to the deification realm, this is something all cultivators in the world yearn for. Many people are willing to gamble for the sake of advancing to the core formation realm, let alone the deification realm. Even if this is only a legend, it's still worth risking their lives." But, without waiting for the girl to finish, the foundation building cultivator said, "There are only 2 kinds of people who can ignore this kind of legend. First, people like us simply have no hope. Second, they themselves have extremely high aptitudes and have a great chance of advancing to the nascent soul realm, so there's no need to gamble." At this point, the foundation building cultivator shook his head and said with a sigh, It seems this senior isn't only smart, but her aptitude also isn't bad. Emo Chenga naturally had no idea what these juniors were talking about. As soon as she walked out of Jade Chilan Pavilion, she discovered that North Pole Island was a lot more deserted than usual. The peddlers on the street were few and far between, and the people who set up stalls were all listless. It seemed the emergence of the sacred objects this time didn't only affect high-level cultivators, but low-level cultivators also weren't spared. Not to mention the gossips in Sky Snow City every day, even North Pole Island, an isolated island in the sea far away from Yunzhong continent, also had a sharp decline in the flow of people and business was bleak. Emo Chenga shook her head then suddenly released her divine sense. After confirming that there was nothing suspicious about her surroundings, she leaped up and flew towards the southern end of North Pole Island. North Pole Island wasn't very big. After a while, Emo Chenga already reached the seaside. She was about to leap up and cross the shallow strait to go to South Pole Island, but in the next second her footsteps stopped, and her expression changed. She stood in midair dumbfounded. As far as she could see, there was an endless ocean in front of her, not a strait that was less than 2 miles long, and there was no trace of South Pole Island. What's going on? After being dumbfounded for a while, Emo Chenga exhaled and continued to fly south. She couldn't be mistaken about this direction. South Pole Island was in this direction, so how could it possibly disappear? Could it be that it was blocked by something? Emo Chenga flew to the sky above the original South Pole Island and circled around, but she didn't find anything. The seawater was still seawater, as if there had never been an island here. How could this be? She muttered to herself. With her current cultivation level, she could see that there was nothing strange in the vicinity. It shouldn't be something like an illusory formation covering the island. But where did South Pole Island go? After thinking for a while, Emo Chenga still didn't understand what happened, so she turned around and flew back to North Pole Island, heading towards the town on the island. Little brother. As soon as she entered the town, Emo Chenga called out to a teenager who was soliciting business. This teenager should be a broker. Upon hearing her call, he turned to look at her and immediately showed an attentive smile. Senior, what can I do for you? Whether it's looking for someone or asking for directions, buying things or staying at an inn, I can help you. Emo Chenga wasn't in the mood to chat with him, so she said directly, I want to inquire about a piece of information. That's not a problem. Senior, please tell me. I grew up here, so there's nothing I don't know about North Pole Island. Emo Chenga ignored the teenager's bragging and asked, Then do you know that there's a South Pole Island south of North Pole Island? Upon hearing this, the teenager looked at her a few more times and finally said, Senior is right. There's indeed a South Pole Island south of our North Pole Island. But that island is very small and has nothing good, so basically no one goes there. Outsiders almost don't know about it. What do you mean? Emo Chenga was sensitive to this word. What do you mean? The teenager said, Senior doesn't know, but there's a small volcano on South Pole Island. South Pole Island appeared because of the volcano's eruption. However, the volcano hasn't moved for many years, so many people have forgotten about it. But 3 years ago that volcano suddenly erupted and then South Pole Island sank. Sank. Emo Chenga's expression changed greatly. She knew there was a volcano on South Pole Island, but she didn't expect the volcano would actually erupt and sink South Pole Island. Did that mean South Pole Island no longer existed? What about the passage? Did it also not exist? Speaking of which, this incident 3 years ago scared a lot of people. It said that some cultivators escaped from South Pole Island, and the mortals sank along with South Pole Island. Fortunately, that volcano was only a small one, so it didn't affect North Pole Island. At this point, the teenager carefully looked at Emo Chenga. Senior, are you going to South Pole Island to look for someone? If you're looking for those cultivators, I can help you inquire about them. They should still be alive. After a long time, Emo Chenga shook her head blankly. She casually threw him several spirit stones then turned around and left. She didn't care about the people on South Pole Island, but if South Pole Island sank, how could she go back? Chapter 426. Emo Chenga stood in the air above the sea and silently gazed at the vast ocean below. This was where the South Pole Island used to be, but now there was no trace of the island at all, not even a reef. In the vast sea there were many miraculous things. It was normal for islands to disappear. Some islands disappeared overnight, while others suddenly reappeared. Like the South Pole Island, which appeared and disappeared because of a volcano many years ago, it wasn't strange at all. However, what happened to the other islands had nothing to do with Mo Chenga. This South Pole Island, on the other hand, was the link between the Celestial Pole and Yunzhong. The South Pole Island had disappeared, and the passage was gone. How could they go back to the Celestial Pole? Mo Chenga didn't know that ever since she heard this news, she had been at a loss for several days. There was no doubt that he had to return to the Celestial Pole. She wasn't Nie Wuxiang. She had a master, relatives, and lover in the Celestial Pole, so how could she cast them aside as if they had nothing? However, how could they go back to the Celestial Pole? The South Pole Island had disappeared, and the passage no longer existed. Didn't that mean he had to cross the South Sea like Nie Wuxiang? However, even nascent soul cultivators couldn't guarantee their safety in crossing the South Sea. Could it be that she was hoping to have the same luck as Nie Wuxiang? Luck was luck because it didn't necessarily come. If she saw Nie Wuxiang safely crossing the South Sea and rashly tried it, it would be too risky. She wanted to return to the Celestial Pole, but she absolutely didn't want to risk her life like this. After thinking for a while, Mo Chenga heaved a sigh and untied the spiritual beast pouch tied around her waist. Master. Lil Fan's cyan body came out of the spirit beast bag. It was a sea beast. As soon as it came out of the spirit beast bag, it keenly smelled the scent of the sea and was overjoyed. Master, where is this? Mo Chenga gently patted its head and said, Xiaofan, this is where we came from, remember? Yifan blinked her eyes in confusion. Where did you come from? Mo Chenga said, it's the place where we came to Yunzhong through the underground sewer. Upon hearing what she said, Yifan quickly understood and said in amazement, Master, you mean? It turned its head to look around, but all it saw was the vast sea and the North Pole Island not far away. Where's that hot spring? The island disappeared? Mo Chenga nodded. Lil Fan lived in the sea all year round, so it was easy for it to understand the disappearance of the island. What should we do? Yifan wagged her tail and jumped around her. Can't we go back? Can't I go to Donghai in the future? Would I never see Grandpa again? No, I don't want it. Master, what should I do? Looking at the extremely anxious Xiaofan, Mo Chenga smiled bitterly. How would she know what to do? This kind of thing was beyond a human's ability. Go down and take a look. After a while she said, I wonder if this island has sunk to the bottom of the sea. Go down and see if the passage is still there. Yes. Hearing her words, Yifan was overjoyed. How could I forget? The island sank. Maybe it's just this part of the passage that's broken. Maybe it can be reopened. Master, I'm going. After saying that, Yifan hurriedly dove down, and with a huala sound, it drilled into the sea. With a flick of its cyan tail, it swiftly dived down. Mo Chenga was left standing in the sea breeze, still speechless. Although she let Yifan go down to find the passage, she actually did not have much hope in her heart. What happened in the vast sea was beyond the reach of a human's ability. That passage led to the bottom of the sea. How could an island be destroyed by a volcanic eruption? She was afraid that the lava would pour back into the passage when it erupted and completely block it. If this was on land, it would be fine. At worst, she could break mountains and rocks and search slowly. But this was the sea. Even if she was a high-level cultivator and could dive into the sea for a short time, she could not open a passage at the bottom of the sea. The reason why she let Yifan go down to look for the passage was that she was unwilling to give up. What if she was lucky and the passage could be used as long as it was slightly cleaned? Holding this kind of hope, Mo Chenga waited silently. 1 hour, 4 hours. 1 day, 2 days, Yifan never came up. Mo Chenga was not worried that something might happen to it. They had a spiritual beast contract. If something happened to Yifan, she would sense it more or less. Besides, Yifan was a sea dragon. This sea area was so close to the North Pole Island, so there would be no high-level sea beast. How could those low-level sea beasts be a match for a sea dragon? Maybe Yifan was unwilling to give up, so it kept looking for it. On the 3rd day, the sea finally fluctuated. With a splash, Yifan came out of the sea. Master. Seeing Mo Chenga, Yifan approached her with grievance and rubbed its head against her arm. Seeing Yifan's depressed look, Mo Chenga had already guessed the result. Fortunately, she was mentally prepared. She just sighed and stroked its head. Let's think of another way. Yifan had been with Mo Chenga for more than 10 years. In the beginning, it only trusted her because of the spiritual beast contract. But after so many years, it ate so many medicinal pills from her and fought side by side with her, this trust had become trust. It believed that its master must have a way to solve it. Sitting cross-legged in the air, Mo Chenga had no intention of leaving, so Yifan also stayed motionless beside her. After thinking for a while, Mo Chenga opened another spiritual beast bag. This time it was Feifei that came out. Where is this? As soon as it came out of the spiritual beast bag, the sea breeze blew on its body. Feifei shivered and smoothed its fur. Ah, the sea. Although Feifei wasn't a sea beast, it also lived on an island in the East Sea. Seeing the sea, it was very happy. Master, where is this? Since its awakening, Mo Chenga hadn't seen Feifei so cheerful and childish. Although she was very annoyed, she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth and show a little smile. She stroked Feifei's smooth fur and said, Feifei, we can't go back. Feifei was happy, but when it suddenly heard this, it blinked its eyes in confusion. Mo Chenga said, the passage we used to come from the celestial pole collapsed, so we can't go back the way we came. Upon hearing this, Feifei just responded and said indifferently, if you don't want to go back, then don't go back. It's also good here. It wasn't like Xiaofan, who had elders and relatives and was no different from humans. It was captured and became a spiritual beast as soon as it was born, so it had no concept of its hometown and no nostalgia for the celestial pole. As long as the virtual sky world was still there, going back or not wasn't important to it at all. Based on Feifei's tone, if it wasn't because she was powerless to get angry, Mo Chenga really wanted to throw it down from here. Ever since its awakening, this guy only knew how to annoy people. Don't go back? That's easy for you to say. Not to mention anything else, my sea of knowledge was once imprinted by a top cultivator. If I don't do what he asked me to do within 200 years and let him remove the imprint for me, I can only live for 200 years. Mo Chenga frowned. Now, I only have about 120 years left. Ha! Feifei blinked. This happened before the two of them formed a spiritual beast contract, so it naturally didn't know about it. Don't say this has nothing to do with you. Mo Chenga gave it a cold look. If I die, the virtual sky world will become an ownerless object. Either you cultivate inside until you reach the realm of void treading or you wait for the next master to recognize you as its master. However, I remember you said that although you ancient divine beasts are powerful, you don't know much about techniques like void treading. In addition, by the way, I can make the virtual sky world recognize me as its master because I have the spiritual roots of the origin. Think about it, when the next spiritual roots of the origin appears, happens to find the virtual sky world, and it also recognizes me as its master, how long will it take? Feifei was speechless for a while. Then it immediately changed its attitude and wagged its tail to curry favor. Okay, I understand. You must find a way to go back within these 120 years, right? Even earlier. Mo Chenga lowered her head and muttered to herself. After a long time she sighed and said, that won't be easy. Although she'd already told Qinshi about this matter and she believed he'd find a way to find clues, how could it be easy to find the remains of a cultivator who died 5,000 years ago? Besides, Wanderer Ziwei's character was quite strange. After thinking for a long time, Mo Chenga still couldn't think of a good way. She rubbed her brows and muttered to herself, find a way to the celestial pole? Where should I start? Feifei blinked and said, don't tell me the cultivators in Yunzhong have never been to the celestial pole? Of course they have, Mo Chenga said. But, as far as I know, the cultivators in Yunzhong who have been to the celestial pole are all nascent soul cultivators. For example, Zhong Muling and Yuan Bao. Since they could advance to the deification realm, they were naturally very powerful nascent soul cultivators. In addition, Martial Uncle Jinyang said he once met a cultivator in Yunzhong who crossed the South Sea. That cultivator was in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, but he had a wonderful escape technique. Aside from this passage, Mo Chenga wasn't sure whether there was a shortcut from Yunzhong to the celestial pole. Even if there was, it would probably be very secretive. There was also an obvious path, crossing the South Sea. The danger of crossing the South Sea didn't need to be mentioned, but if they couldn't find any other way, this was the only choice. Since they're both nascent soul cultivators, Master, you should also cultivate to the nascent soul realm. 120 years should be easy for you, right? Feifei said casually. This time Mo Chenga didn't glare at it. She muttered, yes, I must cultivate to the nascent soul realm to cross the South Sea. I can't be sure whether I can find another way or not. That being the case, I must be prepared to cross the South Sea. At this thought, her eyes shone with determination. 120 years was indeed enough for her to advance to the nascent soul realm or even the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. During this time, on one hand, she had to improve her strength as much as possible to prepare for crossing the South Sea. On the other hand, she had to find a way to find a shortcut to the celestial pole. Having made up her mind, Mo Chenga called the two spiritual beasts. Enter the spiritual beast bag. Let's go. Fei wagged its tail in confusion. Where are we going? To enter closed-door meditation, of course, Mo Chenga said. Even if we can't find another way, as long as I advance to the nascent soul realm, there'll be hope to cross the South Sea. Chapter 427. It's really not easy to subdue this primordial devil aura. Nie Wuxiang sighed and opened her eyes. Mo Chenga had been gone for some time, but she was still in closed-door meditation every day, working hard to subdue this primordial devil aura. However, from the time she regained consciousness 5 years ago until now, the amount of primordial devil aura she subdued was pitifully small. At this rate, she estimated her closed-door meditation would last for more than 100 years. It wasn't that she couldn't bear loneliness. Living with someone like Master Song Feng for more than 100 years, what else couldn't she endure? However, as long as she didn't solve this problem, she couldn't feel at ease. Is there any way to shorten this time? Nie Wuxiang thought silently. Suddenly she sensed something, stood up, walked out of the cultivation room and opened the stone door of the cave. I'm back again. Mo Chenga stood outside the cave, seemingly about to send her a message, but when she saw her, she shrugged helplessly. Nie Wuxiang was surprised. Didn't you go to see Ling Yunhe? Are you done? Do I look like I'm done? She sighed and walked into the cave. You don't mind if I continue to live here, do you? Nie Wuxiang was the one who paid the rent last time. Whatever, Nie Wuxiang said, closed the stone door, opened the restriction and asked, what's going on? After tidying up her clothes, pouring tea and sitting down at the stone table, Mo Chenga said, I can't go back. Nie Wuxiang was stunned and puzzled. What do you mean? I can't go back to the celestial pole, Mo Chenga said. Nie Wuxiang was stunned for a long time before she realized what she meant. She said incredulously, you mean the way you came here is blocked? Mo Chenga didn't tell Nie Wuxiang in detail how she came to the celestial pole. Nie Wuxiang also knew this kind of thing was mostly a secret, so she didn't ask. Although she didn't know the inside story, she guessed Mo Chenga's road must be very safe since she didn't take it seriously. But now Mo Chenga actually said she couldn't go back? Since the passage had disappeared, it couldn't be considered a secret. Mo Chenga simply told her about the road and the disappearance of the South Pole Island in detail. After Mo Chenga finished speaking, Nie Wuxiang was speechless for a long time. The passage that had existed for 5,000 years actually collapsed a few years after she came to Yunzhong. What else could she say? This was already bad luck to a certain extent. A good while later, Nie Wuxiang asked, then what do you plan to do now? Mo Chenga smiled bitterly. What else can we do? We can only find another way. We can't just stay in Yunzhong. And you're not me? Nie Wuxiang pondered for a moment. If you can't find it, are you planning to cross the South Sea? Yes. That's why I came back to find you. Firstly, if you want to cross the South Sea, you'll need to be stronger. Secondly, you've done this before. Let me ask you about your experience. Without hesitation, Nie Wuxiang said, the reason why I was able to reach Yunzhong safely was because of luck and the treasures I stole from Master. To tell you the truth, luck played a big role in this. If one could safely cross the South China Sea by relying on a magic weapon, how could Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole not have any contact for so many years? However, if you need it, I can lend you that magic weapon. Mo Chenga was stunned. This. She came to ask Nie Wuxiang about her experience crossing the South China Sea, but she never thought she would be willing to lend her magic weapon. Magic weapons were cultivators' most precious and private things. Even good friends wouldn't lend them to each other. Moreover, since Nie Wuxiang relied on this magic weapon to safely reach Yunzhong, it showed that this thing was very powerful and was definitely an extremely precious top-grade magic weapon. The most important thing was that after she returned to the Celestial Pole, she didn't know whether she would come back to Yunzhong again. If she didn't come back, she wouldn't be able to return it. Seeing her expression, Nie Wuxiang already understood what she was thinking. She said faintly, you don't need to think too much. This thing may be very powerful, but it's useless to me now. After a pause, she said, let's talk about it again when you're really going to cross the South China Sea. What about the cloud-soaring crane? You didn't finish it, but did he deny it? I didn't see him. Mo Chenga looked at Nie Wuxiang and smiled bitterly again. You probably don't know it's already chaotic outside, right? What? Nie Wuxiang was surprised. What's going on? Mo Chenga sighed. It's complicated to explain. After spending some time, she explained to Nie Wuxiang everything she saw and heard after she went out. Although most of it was just rumors and illusions from Yunzhong, Nie Wuxiang had never heard of these things, so she listened with great interest. There's actually such a legend in Yunzhong? Nie Wuxiang was very surprised. Although the cultivation world in Yunzhong was much larger than in the Celestial Pole, their realms weren't much higher than the cultivators in the Celestial Pole. However, if the legend of the 5 saints was true, Yunzhong's history was much more glorious than the Celestial Pole's. In the history of the Celestial Pole, there were only rumors of 2 people successfully advancing to the deification realm, and there wasn't any solid evidence. But the 5 saints were different. They had 5 sacred objects handed down from generation to generation, and most of them had disciples to pass on, so their credibility was much higher. Heavenly Devil Tower. I really don't know what kind of magic weapon it is to be called a sacred object. Even if these 5 sacred objects were only keys to open that mysterious space, they definitely weren't ordinary objects. Besides, according to the rumors, this Heavenly Devil Tower was the Devil Venerable's most powerful magic weapon. What? Are you interested? Mo Chenga glanced at her. You're already a devil cultivator. If you can get this Heavenly Devil Tower, your strength will presumably increase greatly. That's good. It's useless even if it's good. Nie Wuxiang wasn't stupid. She rolled her eyes at Mo Chenga and said, with my current state, it's not suitable for me to travel outside. Even if I can I win against those cultivators? It's better to stay out of it and watch coldly. No matter how good a treasure is, it's not as important as my life. Mo Chenga smiled but didn't say anything. On this point, she and Nie Wuxiang were quite in agreement. They weren't cultivators who were nearing the end of their lifespans and had no hope of making a realm breakthrough, so why should they risk their lives to fight for this tiny possibility? It was better to cultivate step by step, which would make realm breakthroughs faster. They hadn't been separated for too long, but neither of them felt like they'd reunited after a long time. After talking about these things, they returned to their previous state and went back to their respective cultivation rooms to do their own things. Mo Chenga laid a restriction, then entered the virtual sky world. She released the 3 spiritual beasts and let them play while she sat in the cultivation room, pondering in silence. Among her 3 spiritual beasts, although Xiaofan could talk, it was too naive. Feifei was smart enough, but its temperament was too similar to that of humans. It had no interest in things that had nothing to do with it. As such, she could only ponder about returning to the Celestial Pole by herself. After thinking for a while, she couldn't help but think about the turmoil in Yunzhong. The 5 saints were rumored to have 5 holy objects. Apart from the Heavenly Devil Tower, there was also the inescapable net. She took out her own inescapable net, but the more she looked at it, the stranger she felt. The momentum of this object was indeed not strong, but the spiritual power on it was really powerful. She tried to use her spiritual aura to attack it, but the result was like a clay ox entering the sea. It didn't have the slightest effect. Could this be the rumored great master Hui Yin's inescapable net? Impossible, right? If that was the case, it would be too inconceivable. This was just a magic weapon she inadvertently collected, so how could it be a Buddhist holy object? And before that, it was in the hands of 2 foundation-building cultivators. If she could find the Buddhist cultivator she let go, she might be able to figure out what was going on. Unfortunately, she didn't ask about that person's identity and origin. After looking at it for a while, she still put the inescapable net back. After a moment of hesitation, she took out a rusty sword. This was the Fuxing sword she exchanged from Devil Monarch Xianyue. Although this sword was rusty, it had an extraordinary momentum. The power of wind and thunder could be faintly seen inside, so it was obviously not an ordinary weapon. However, this sword was seriously corroded by the devil aura. She couldn't see the slightest spiritual aura, and the body of the sword was dim. If she didn't look at it carefully, she would probably think it was a useless sword. After thinking for a while, Mo Chenga stood up and walked into the tool refining room. Seeing the familiar layout of the tool refining room, Mo Chenga stood still. She couldn't help but recall the scene when she and Qin refined the heaven and earth fan in the tool refining room. Her tool refining skills really weren't very good. Every small part here was made by Qin himself. At that time, the 2 of them stayed here for several years. Every day they discussed how to refine the heaven and earth fan, experimenting again and again. In fact, when they were together, they rarely stuck to each other sweetly. Most of the time, they talked about their experiences and exchanged their thoughts. Although they weren't sweet enough, those days were full of happiness when she recalled them. Cultivation companions, companions who accompanied each other to seek immortality and seek the Tao, that was enough. How could their affectionate relationship compare to the long years of dependence and companionship? They had been separated for 10 years after leaving the celestial pole. In fact, Mo Tiange didn't miss him much, but now that she was in the place where they used to be together and touched the tools he used, she felt a surge of longing that drowned her. I haven't gone back for so many years. Is he doing well? Has he come out of closed-door meditation? Is he worried about me? If he knows I can't go back, will he come to find me? The scenes they used to be together kept emerging in her mind. The cold and taciturn senior martial brother Qin, the master Taoist Shoujing who took her to escape from Mount Yunwu, the 2 months of companionship. The senior martial brother Qin who risked his life to save her, the master Taoist Shoujing who coldly turned away when he saw her, and the 35 years of estrangement. At that time they were so self-righteous. They could calculate shrewdly in other matters, but when it came to matters of the heart, they always made wild guesses about each other's thoughts. They held on to their pride and refused to put down their pride and treat each other honestly. Fortunately, they finally came together and didn't waste their fate. Thinking back, their meeting was so coincidental. If her father hadn't traveled with him, they wouldn't have met. If second uncle hadn't taken her away, she would have only regarded him as a senior when she grew up in Shenqing school. If he hadn't happened to go to Mount Yunwu, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet as peers. They would have missed each other by just a little bit. Fortunately, he was the person her father entrusted her to. Fortunately, they didn't know each other when she was young. Fortunately, she had grown up before they met. The more she thought back, the more she missed him. Therefore, she had to go back to the celestial pole. Chapter 428. Although she had made up her mind to return to the celestial pole, it was still a matter that needed long-term planning. The situation in Yunzhong was chaotic, so it wasn't a good time to go out. Moreover, it was too dangerous to cross the South Sea with her cultivation level. Considering these 2 points, Mo Tiange could only be patient and do it slowly. 120 years should be enough. The following days were very boring. Nie Wuxiang didn't leave her cave at all, and Mo Tiange also lived in seclusion. Every day she cultivated, studied Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience, read ancient books, and went out to buy some necessities and inquire about news from time to time. High-level cultivators in Yunzhong gathered in the returning ruined sea, and every day, some gossip spread in Guifang City. Not long after, there was a rumor in Guifang City that those cultivators had found traces of the Heavenly Devil Tower. The first cultivator to get the Heavenly Devil Tower had died in the returning ruined sea, and the tower fell into the hands of an individual cultivator. Later, there was another rumor that the individual cultivator escaped for several days and was discovered by a devil monarch, who killed him on the spot and took the Heavenly Devil Tower. Unfortunately, several great cultivators in Eastern Tang also discovered it at the same time, and they fell into a fight. In this fight, South Zhou's Buddhist cultivators and Confucian cultivators were also involved. Hundreds and thousands of core formation cultivators fought in the returning ruined sea, and many nascent soul cultivators also shed all pretenses of cordiality. This rumor lasted for several years. Every time Mo Tiange went out, she heard the news of a certain cultivator from a certain sect dying. Mo Tiange and Nie Wuxiang discussed this in private. After this incident, the forces in Yunzhong would probably be reshuffled. So many cultivators died, and all of them were above the core formation realm. For many small cultivation groups, this would be a disaster. As expected, after that, the rumors in Guifang City were all about how many cultivators had fallen. This storm lasted for more than 20 years before it calmed down. In the first few years, cultivators from all sides fought for the Heavenly Devil Tower, and there was a reign of terror every day. During this period, many small cultivation groups were destroyed because of this. Later, the competition was limited to the nascent soul cultivators of the big cultivation groups. At the same time as cultivators returned to their sects, the battlefield was no longer limited to the returning ruined sea. But soon, there were many different opinions about who got the Heavenly Devil Tower, and no one could figure it out. Oftentimes, there would be sects that had feuded with each other, claiming that the other party had the Heavenly Devil Tower in their hands. Because of this, Yunzhong was in a state of chaos. In the last 10 years, the storm gradually subsided. All the sects and forces suffered heavy losses and closed their doors to recuperate. Yunzhong finally calmed down. As for who the Heavenly Demon Tower ended up in, no one knew. Apart from the people who obtained the Heavenly Demon Tower, no one else benefited from this turmoil. Instead, they lost many outstanding core formation cultivators and even nascent soul cultivators. Some people even suspected that this was a conspiracy to make the major forces in Yunzhong kill each other and consume their strength. However, there was no doubt that the heavenly demon tower had appeared. Many cultivators had seen this sacred object before, but it was a pity that before they could figure out how to use it, it had been taken away by others. When Mo Chenga heard this, she thought to herself, how could these nascent soul cultivators not think this might be a conspiracy? However, as long as the heavenly demon tower was real, even if they had doubts, they would still jump down willingly. Advancing to the deification realm, for these nascent soul cultivators who had almost cultivated to the extreme and had no hope of advancing, they would not hesitate to risk their lives for it. Living in Guifang City, what Mo Chenga heard the most was about Guifang Demon Monarch and his subordinates. More than 10 years ago, Guifang Demon Monarch had already returned to Guifang City with his disciples. In this battle, although Guifang City's foundation was not shaken, it suffered a lot of losses. For example, among Guifang Demon Monarch's disciples, the two most likely to advance to the nascent soul realm died in the turmoil. For this, Guifang City's devil cultivators were very worried. Although Guifang Demon Monarch was powerful and was one of the 3 great demon monarchs, his lifespan was really running out. Some people calculated that he had 500 years at most. In these 500 years, if Guifang City did not have a powerful successor with profound cultivation, it would become the target of other forces. This was definitely not a good thing for Guifang City. However, some people optimistically said that Guifang Demon Monarch's young disciple with excellent aptitude had already advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. In 500 years he might be able to smoothly advance to the nascent soul realm. At that time, Guifang City could still maintain its status as one of the 3 great devil territories. Besides, although Guifang City suffered losses, the other 2 devil territories also lost a lot of disciples. No one was better off than the other, so what did it matter? There were quite a lot of people who agreed with this theory. After all, low-level cultivators like them couldn't live for 500 years. After they died, who would care about the flood? The Guifang Demon Monarch's young disciple these cultivators mentioned should be Yang Qingji. In other words, Yang Qingji not only escaped unscathed in these more than 20 years of turmoil, but he also advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. Moreover, even the heavens were on his side, causing his rival senior brother to fall in the turmoil. In this way, his current days could be regarded as the end of his bitterness and the beginning of his happiness. Without his senior martial brother and sister suppressing him, he became Guifang Demon Monarch's disciple most likely to advance to the nascent soul realm. Guifang City would definitely support him with all its strength. From now on, no one would suppress him, and he would also become the real young lord of Guifang City. In the past more than 20 years, Nie Wuxiang's refining of the primordial devil aura was quite smooth, but the speed was a bit slow. Until now, she still only refined 1/3 of it. In this case, she still needed 50 years to refine this primordial devil aura for her own use. However, Nie Wuxiang said the subdued primordial devil aura had greatly improved her cultivation level. She estimated that in a few years she could advance to the late stage of the core formation realm. If she could successfully subdue all the primordial devil aura in 50 years, she could advance to the nascent soul realm. Nie Wuxiang was now a devil cultivator, so mental cultivation was no longer important to her. It didn't matter if she directly entered closed-door meditation here until she advanced to the nascent soul realm. As for Mo Chenga, her cultivation in the past more than 20 years was also very smooth. She didn't take too many medicinal pills, but with her qualifications, Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience, and the rich spiritual aura in the virtual sky world, her cultivation speed was terrifyingly fast. Now she had reached the peak of the middle stage of the core formation realm and could enter closed-door meditation to advance to the late stage. Although she felt she passed this time's cultivation, Mo Chenga still decided to advance to the late stage first. Everything had its priorities. Her biggest problem now wasn't that her cultivation speed was too fast, but that her cultivation level wasn't high enough. Therefore, even if she had concerns about her unstable foundation, she still decided to advance to the nascent soul realm first. As for the problem of her mental state, it wouldn't be too late to consider it when she advanced to the nascent soul realm. After making this decision, Mo Chenga spent some time to buy the things she needed for her closed-door meditation. After informing Nie Wuxiang, she entered the virtual sky world to enter closed-door meditation. Sitting in the small room inside the virtual sky world, Mo Chenga didn't cultivate right away. In the past more than 20 years, she didn't just spend her time cultivating. In addition, she also read all the books inside the virtual sky world. She had already used her tool refining technique to grind away the rust on the Fuxing sword in her hand. Although it hadn't recovered its former elegance, it was still faintly shining. She took out the Fuxing sword from her Qingquan bag. The body of the sword was like a vast expanse of autumn water, cold and chilly. The shape of the hilt was simple and unadorned. Upon closer inspection, two ancient characters were engraved on the hilt, Fuxing. Although it was no longer mottled with rust, the whole sword was surrounded by a layer of faintly discernible devil aura. This devil aura looked very faint, but Emo Chinga couldn't get rid of it when she tried. She guessed that this sword had been left in the devil domain for several tens of thousands of years. Over time, the originally weak devil aura accumulated into a terrifying power, gradually corroding the masterless Fuxing sword. After several tens of thousands of years of accumulation, no matter how powerful the Fuxing sword was originally, it still couldn't resist the corrosion of time. She once asked Nie Wuxiang how to deal with this kind of situation, but Nie Wuxiang said she didn't have an answer. Although she grew up with Master Song Feng, the primordial devil great technique wasn't the same as the cultivation technique of devil cultivators. Besides, this kind of situation was too special, so she had no way of knowing. Emo Tienga turned to search for relevant information in the books left by the previous master of the virtual sky world. In the end, Feifei told her that in the Middle Ages, there was a secret treasure called spirit-quenching water. This thing was the nemesis of devil aura and was said to be able to eliminate everything related to devil aura. Feifei was idle and bored in the virtual sky world. Aside from cultivating and playing with Xiaohua, the rest of its time was to read books. It was originally a divine beast, so its intelligence wasn't inferior to that of humans. Its memory was even better, it almost never forgot anything. Emo Chinga found that book. Sure enough, there was a record of spirit-quenching water, but this water only appeared occasionally in the Middle Ages immortal realm. It was extremely rare and precious. The Middle Ages immortal realm that was called the Middle Ages immortal realm had long disappeared from the world and was nowhere to be found. Emo Chinga was greatly disappointed and could only give up for the time being. She occasionally took out the Fuxing sword to study whether there was any other way to eliminate the devil aura. In fact, according to Black Moon Devil Monarch, the current Fuxing sword already had a certain amount of power, so it wouldn't be a problem for her to use it as a magic weapon. However, if the devil aura on the sword could be eliminated, the sword could regain its former sharpness. Since this sword was the sword of Fu Yaozi, the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong's history, if it regained its former power, how powerful would it be? Even though Emo Chenga wasn't too greedy for magic weapons, she still felt agitated when she thought about this. She put away the Fuxing sword, then arranged the items she bought this time one by one. Although she didn't really need spiritual plants, cultivating in seclusion for more than 20 years still cost her a lot of spirit stones. There were most spiritual plants in the virtual sky world, but there were always some ingredients that couldn't be found here, so she had to buy them. Formation tools, talismans and so on. Although they didn't cost much each time, they added up to a considerable amount. This was Guifang City, so Dao cultivators' things weren't cheap. In the past more than 20 years, Emo Chenga watched as her pockets flattened. In the past, she received a lot of offerings from the cultivation group, and Bichuan Court once again paid her several tens of thousands of spirit stones. In addition to the many Chengkuan bags she picked up on Demonic Mountain and the belongings of cultivators she killed, she didn't take spirit stones seriously for a while. But even if she had too many spirit stones, they couldn't make up for so many years of not making any money. Moreover, the cost of reaching the core formation realm wasn't small. After realizing this, Emo Chenga began to plan carefully. As long as she controlled herself and avoided spending as much as possible, the spirit stones she had should be enough for her until she formed her nascent soul. Once she became a nascent soul cultivator, she naturally wouldn't need to worry about spirit stones anymore. In the end, she shook her head and threw these trivial matters to the back of her mind. She then tidied up the miscellaneous items, sat cross-legged on the praying mat, started to meditate and began to breathe. During this closed-door meditation, she definitely had to enter the late stage of the core formation realm. Chapter 429. In the sky above Guifang City, several people were standing in the air where the fog lingered. These people were all wearing monk robes and straw shoes. They were bald and scarred, holding Buddhist staffs and dressed like monks. However, the color and style of their kasayas were slightly different. Among them, the one with the most exquisite kasaya and the strongest momentum was an old monk with white eyebrows and a white beard. This old monk was sitting cross-legged on the lotus platform with his palms together and his eyes closed. He was surrounded by other monks with Buddhist beads hanging in front of his chest. "Jueshin, is it here?" the old monk asked. When he asked, his eyes were still closed, his face was calm and he didn't move at all. A middle-aged monk standing next to him lowered his head and answered, "Yes, master. I've investigated. The person we're looking for is here." The old monk nodded slightly. "Lead the way." "Yes," the middle-aged monk answered respectfully. Then he looked up and said to the others, "Junior Marshal brothers, let's go." Under the guidance of this middle-aged monk, a group of people hid in the fog and quietly sneaked into Guifang City. However, none of the cultivators in Guifang City noticed them. Even the city protecting restriction didn't move. At this moment, if there were high-level cultivators here, they would find that the old monk with a kind face was actually a cultivator in the late stage of nascent soul, and the disciples around him were all in the core formation realm. Emo Chinga opened her eyes, looked at her hands and was overjoyed. With enough medicinal pills and 3 years of closed-door meditation, she finally advanced to the late stage of core formation realm smoothly. This speed wasn't fast, but it wasn't slow either. Before this, her cultivation level was high, but her mental state cultivation hadn't reached the realm where success would come naturally. In the past 3 years while she cultivated, she used all kinds of panaceas to help her stabilize her spiritual aura and calm her mind. Only in this way could she smoothly advance to the middle stage of core formation realm step by step. For traditional Taoist cultivators like them, if their mental state wasn't strong enough, it would be much more difficult for them to advance. Unfortunately, many Taoist cultivators didn't understand this. Although they knew they had to cultivate their mental state, they didn't pay much attention to it. In this world, spiritual aura was scarce and cultivation was difficult, so many Taoist cultivators took the same path of cultivation as devil cultivators. They only pursued strength and didn't pay attention to mental state cultivation. Once she sensed the abundance of spiritual aura in her body, she stretched her body, then opened the cultivation room's restriction. As soon as the door was opened, Fei ran in. "Ah, master, you really did advance." Fei's cheerful voice made Emo Chinga instinctively feel like there was a conspiracy. She asked warily, "What are you doing?" Fei blinked. "No, I'm just saying." After a while, it wagged its tail and said, "Master, it's been 29 years. Emo Chinga understood what it meant. 29 years. It had been 29 years since they discovered that the South Pole Island had sunk. In other words, it had been more than 40 years since she left the celestial pole. The remaining time was less than 100 years. Although she accepted Wanderer Ziwei's task together with Taoist Fangjing, with Taoist Fangjing's cultivation level and lifespan, the possibility of him completing the task within 200 years was next to none, so she had to do it herself. Even if she couldn't do it, she had to return to Ziwei's Immortal's cave in the celestial pole. Otherwise, even if Wanderer Ziwei suddenly became kind and didn't want her to die, it would be useless. 29 years. Emo Chinga sighed. Time was tight. Since she hadn't taken care of the virtual sky world for 3 years, Emo Chinga spent some time tidying it up. She first ordered the 2 stone sculpture puppets to tidy up the medicinal fields and then to repair the bamboo house. As for the 3 spiritual beasts, they didn't need her care at all. Xiaohua grew up here, so it was more familiar with the spiritual plants in the medicinal fields than she was. As for Fei and Xiaofan, they already had spiritual intelligence, so she didn't need to worry about them at all. Afterwards, she left the virtual sky world. As soon as she stepped out of her cultivation room, the door of Nie Wuxiang's cultivation room opened at the same time. Sure enough, you made a realm breakthrough smoothly. Nie Wuxiang, who was sitting cross-legged on the stone bed, raised her head and smiled at her. Emo Chinga looked at her with surprise. "You also made a realm breakthrough." Nie Wuxiang was now in the late stage of the core formation realm. Her primordial devil aura had converged a lot, but her power had become stronger. Nie Wuxiang straightened her clothes, got off the bed and walked out of the cultivation room. The two of them sat down casually in the hall. "When we first met, I was in the late stage of the foundation building realm and you were in the middle stage. My cultivation level was higher than yours and I'm older than you, so how could I fall behind you?" Emo Chinga was stunned, then burst into laughter. "You actually remember this." In the cultivation world, it was very common for the younger to have a higher cultivation level than the older. Very few people would judge their cultivation level by age, unless they thought highly of themselves and were unwilling to admit defeat. Emo Chinga didn't expect Nie Wuxiang to be so competitive. "I always have to find some motivation for myself. Nie Wuxiang said sternly. By the way, since you've advanced to the late stage, what are you going to do next? It doesn't matter to me now. It doesn't matter if I enter closed-door meditation here until I reach the nascent soul realm, but you don't seem to be able to, right? This was exactly what Mo Tiange was worried about. She thought for a while, then said with a sigh, what else can I do? The turmoil in Yunzhong is almost over, so it shouldn't matter if I go out now. That being the case, I'd better go find Ling Yunhe. On one hand, I can collect my debt, and on the other hand, I can ask him for information. Nie Wuxiang nodded. That's a good idea. She then smiled. Have you asked around? Is Ling Yunhe still alive? Mo Tiange also didn't know. In Guifang City, the news she heard were all mixed. Eastern Tang was, after all, a bit far away. Even if Juyin sect was the #1 sect in Yunzhong, devil cultivators didn't have much interest in its sect head. However, Ling Yunhe shouldn't be that unlucky, right? No matter what, he's the sect head of Juyin sect and he's favored by the elders. He shouldn't have been sacrificed, right? Probably. Nie Wuxiang shrugged. She didn't care about Ling Yunhe. In any case, the debt he owed her wasn't very useful now. When are you going to leave? Probably. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly felt a chill on her back. She and Nie Wuxiang looked at the door at the same time, looking vigilant. There's someone? Nie Wuxiang said in a low voice. Mo Tiange nodded lightly, stood up, and completely activated the restrictions around the cave. At the same time, she spread her divine sense. They're coming for us, she said. It was very easy to distinguish this point. The cave they chose was very remote. Although there were other cultivators living in the surroundings, they laid restrictions and didn't receive any voice transmissions, so those cultivators were smart enough not to disturb them. But now, there were several auras outside that were heading straight for their cave abode. Among them, there was one aura that was even more shocking. Nascent Soul Cultivator. Nie Wuxiang also sensed it, and her expression was a bit strange. Why are there nascent soul cultivators? Moreover, their auras are extremely strong. They don't seem to be ordinary people. They lived with nascent soul cultivators all year round, so based on their experience, it was very easy to distinguish between the early stage and the late stage of the nascent soul realm. This person's aura was definitely that of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, his aura was deliberately restrained, and he was deliberately coming for them. Now, they wouldn't believe it if they said they were being too sensitive. As expected, those people finally stopped in front of their cave abode. Ju Xen, the old monk on the lotus throne, called out with his eyes closed. He didn't move at all. Yes, master, the middle-aged monk whose Buddhist name was Ju Xen answered respectfully. Without needing any instructions, he already stood out. Ju Xen stood in front of the cave's stone door and said loudly, "Benefactors in the cave, we monks from Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple take the liberty to ask for an audience." The monk's voice wasn't loud, but his breath was steady. His voice was like a heavy bell, entering the ears of the two people inside the cave. After a while, there was still no movement. The monk spoke again. "Two benefactors, we are monks from Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple. We take the liberty to request an audience with you." His tone was neither hurried nor slow, but there was a hint of grandeur in it. A moment later, the cave's stone door was finally opened. Two women appeared in front of the monks. One of them was black and the other was white, a Taoist and a devil. Mo Tiange stood half a step ahead of Nie Wuxiang. Her gaze swept over the monks in front of her and finally fell on the late-stage nascent soul old monk. She saluted him and said, "Greetings to Senior Buddhist. May I know why masters have graced us with their presence?" The late-stage nascent soul old monk still had his eyes closed and didn't answer. Monk Ju Xian, who shouted just now, also didn't say anything. All the monks' gazes fell on the young monk standing on the side with his head lowered and his palms clasped together. The tall young monk raised his head and his gaze fell on Mo Tiange. He took 2 steps forward and stood next to monk Ju Xian. Soon after, he cupped his hands and saluted Mo Tiange. "Benefactor, do you still remember this poor monk?" Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange stared at the monk with a slight frown. This monk didn't look different from the others. He was wearing the same monk's robe and straw shoes, had a respectful attitude, and was in the early stage of the core formation realm. Among this group of monks, he didn't stand out at all. However, when Mo Tiange looked at him, she felt a sense of familiarity. This feeling wasn't strong, which meant this person definitely wasn't someone she had a deep impression of. Maybe they only met once or twice and it was a long time ago. Seeing that she didn't answer, the monk said again, 40 years ago when I was still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, I offended Benefactor in Sky Snow City. Benefactor, do you still remember? 40 years ago, Sky Snow City. Mo Chenga hadn't seen many cultivators in Yunzhong, and Buddhist cultivators were even fewer. Upon hearing what he said, her eyes suddenly widened. So it's you. Seeing that she recognized him, the monk smiled. His attitude was still calm. I am. It's been many years since we last met. Benefactor, how have you been? Mo Chenga took a deep breath, then turned around and gave Nia Wuxiang a meaningful glance. Her meaning was, these people are coming for me. She already remembered who this person was. 40 years ago, there were two foundation-building cultivators who tried to rob her in Sky Snow City. One of them spoke rudely and was killed by her, while the other one had a good character, so she let him go. It was from them that she obtained the inescapable net. Thinking about the inescapable net, Mo Chenga already understood why these people were looking at her. The inescapable net in her hands must be the sacred Buddhist relic left behind by Great Master Huiyin. It wasn't an imitation, it was the real deal. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her gaze to the old monk Yuanho, whose eyes were still closed. The old monk had a smile on his face and a kind countenance, but he didn't say anything. May I ask who you are, great masters? The middle-aged monk, Ju Xin, chanted the name of Buddha, then said, Benefactor, we're disciples of Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple. This poor monk's master and also our temple's Puji the Venerable. His Dharma name is Wuming. This poor monk's Dharma name is Ju Xin, and these are my junior martial brothers. This is Ju Wu. In the end, he deliberately pointed at the young monk who spoke to her before. Mo Chenga nodded slightly. Although the other party didn't come with good intentions, his attitude was very polite, so she couldn't be rude. She cupped her hands and said, I'm from the outer endless sea. My surname is Qin and my given name is Wei. This is my good friend Tiancan. Presumably, Great Master's purpose in coming here has nothing to do with her, right? Chapter 430. Among Venerable Avidya's disciples, Jueshin was obviously the one with the longest seniority, so he was the one who spoke for Venerable Avidya. Upon hearing Mo Chenga's words, Jueshin said, So it's Benefactor Qin. Yes, we came to look for you. From what you said, I presume you know what we're here for. Mo Chenga said faintly, I didn't at first, but I guessed after seeing your junior martial brother. Jueshin put his palms together and bowed. Since that's the case, I wonder if Benefactor Qin is willing to return the original item? Mo Chenga didn't answer immediately. She first looked at Jueshin, then at Jueshin, who had his head lowered, and finally at Venerable Avidya, who had been smiling with his eyes closed. Venerable Avidya was a respectful title in Buddhism. Only nascent soul cultivators with extraordinary strength could be granted this title. Ordinary nascent soul cultivators were only called venerables. It seemed this Venerable Avidya had an extraordinary position in Huayan Temple. However, she was very curious. Since this Buddhist cultivator's Dharma name was Avidya and his eyes were closed, could he really not see? Looking at the situation in front of her, Mo Chenga weighed the situation and said, Venerable Avidya Masters, to be honest, if Master Jueshin hadn't come, I would have long forgotten about this matter. Now that I've met Master Jueshin, I know what happened that year was unusual. Seeing that Jueshin wanted to say something, she raised her hand and continued, I'm not interested in other people's sect matters. However, I believe Master Jueshin has already explained what happened that year to the other masters. Since that's the case, shouldn't you give us an explanation for the items you're asking for? Her words were neither servile nor overbearing. She didn't become submissive because of Venerable Avidya's power, nor did she admit that they were unlucky because they had more people. For a moment, the monks were speechless. Jueshin probably also felt it was inconvenient to answer, so he turned to look at his master behind him. Venerable Avidya still had his eyes closed and a smile on his face. This made Jueshin a bit uncertain. He turned back and said hesitantly, Benefactor Qin, this matter, Jueshin? Venerable Avidya, who had been silent, suddenly said, Let Master say it. Jueshin hastily turned around and bowed respectfully. Yes, Master. He then stood to the side. Benefactor Qin. Revered Wu Ming's eyes remained closed the entire time. His voice was neither fast nor slow. What happened in the past was related to the internal affairs of my temple, so it was inconvenient for me to explain it to you. I ask that you forgive me. This revered Wu Ming was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, but he was actually so polite to a mere core formation cultivator. Mo Chenga was very surprised. Although she did not know much about Buddhism, she had been in Yunzhong for a long time. She knew that the rules of Buddhism were very different from those of Tao sects. Buddhist cultivators were very strict. Although the one with the highest cultivation level was still respected, they all judged right and wrong based on reason. It was also because of this that she had the guts to say these words in front of these people. However, she did not expect a late nascent soul cultivator like Reverend Vidya to treat others with such politeness. This made her a little embarrassed. Senior. Mo Chinga cupped her fists and said, Junior has no intention of prying into the affairs of your esteemed temple. It's just that you've come to my immortal's cave with such a great commotion, and you even want to ask for magic weapons, so you must give me an explanation. This old monk understands Benefactor's intention. Revered Avidya had a smile on his face and a calm expression on his face. Normally it was my Huayan temple's disciples who offended Benefactor first, so Benefactor is not at fault. However, Benefactor killed one of my temple's disciples and took away my temple's magic weapon, so this matter can be considered even. What do you think? Upon hearing what he said, Mo Chenga wrinkled her brows slightly. Just a moment ago, she thought this revered Avidya's attitude was amiable and didn't have the slightest domineering characteristic of late nascent soul cultivators. However, his words were rather thought-provoking. What happened that day was originally because two Huayan temple's disciples schemed against her first. Even if she killed both of them, it wouldn't be considered a mistake. However, she didn't kill them all. Not only did she leave a way out for Ju Wu, but she also didn't seize his Chengkuan bag. She only took away the magic weapon that schemed against her. She was already being merciful. That being the case, since this group of people came to ask for the magic weapon, they should apologize to her. However, this old monk said they offended her, so she also killed them and took their treasures, so they were even. This was a bit confusing, right and wrong. Mo Chenga thought in her heart that a late nascent soul cultivator was a late nascent soul cultivator after all. No matter how amiable he was, he still wasn't willing to lose face in front of his juniors. However, this actually aroused her temper, and she couldn't help but want to argue with this revered Avidya. With that thought in mind, Mo Chenga revealed a smile and said, What senior said makes sense. Seeing that she agreed, revered Avidya continued to say, Since Benefactor doesn't have any objections, could you return our temple's magic weapon? Mo Chenga chuckled. She stared at revered Avidya in front of her and said unhurriedly, Senior just said that two of your temple's disciples offended me first, so it's not wrong for me to kill one of them and take away the magic weapon, right? Revered Avidya nodded. Yes. That being the case between me and your temple, there's no longer a problem of who owes whom, right? Revered Avidya paused for a moment before answering, Correct. Mo Chenga smiled. That being the case, isn't Senior pressuring me by asking me to directly hand over the magic weapon? All the monks were dumbfounded. Even revered Avidya didn't answer. After a moment of silence, someone among the monks couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, Benefactor, the inescapable net is our temple's precious treasure. My master asked you nicely for it, but you actually, Juehue. Jueshin shouted, Master's here. You can't be rude. The monk glared at Mo Chenga reluctantly, then lowered his head to accept the instruction. Yes, eldest martial brother. After a while, revered Avidya finally spoke. Benefactor, this old monk might as well speak frankly. Keeping that magic weapon in your hands is a disaster, not a blessing. If you hand it back to this old monk at first glance, it might seem like you've suffered a loss, but when disaster strikes, you'll know what this old monk said isn't false. Mo Chenga remained unmoved. But if I hand this thing over to Senior, it'll definitely be of great benefit to Senior. Nevertheless, revered Avidya said, Benefactor, if someone else came here, they definitely wouldn't be so polite. Mo Chenga raised her eyebrows, but in the next second she smiled. A late nascent realm cultivator was a late nascent realm cultivator after all. Although he spoke politely, he didn't want to suffer a loss at all. The meaning of his words was clear. With my status and cultivation level, how could I be polite to you? Yet you still don't know what's good for you? She naturally knew she had to hand over the inescapable net in front of a late nascent realm cultivator. However, she wasn't willing to keep it safe for someone else for 40 years, so she had to get something back, right? She sighed. In any case, Senior is a late nascent realm expert. Do you really want to be calculative with a small cultivator like me? Upon hearing this, revered Avidya paused for a moment, then suddenly smiled. From the moment he appeared until just now, his expression had been benevolent and his words had been gentle, maintaining the demeanor of a senior eminent monk. It wasn't until now that he finally showed a little bit of humanity. With his eyes still closed, he said with a smile, "It's my fault as a senior. Little fellow Taoist, what benefit do you want? Just tell me directly." From benefactor to little fellow Taoist, the way this revered Avidya addressed her was undoubtedly one step closer. Mo Chenga knew her behavior didn't annoy him. In fact, he even had a little favorable impression of her, which made her feel relieved. Even though she was bold, wanting to ask for benefits from a late nascent realm cultivator she didn't know, she was still worried. After pondering for a moment, she took out something from her Chengkuan bag and spread it on her palm. Senior, Junior isn't someone who doesn't know what's good for her. Since this thing belongs to your honorable temple, I'll return it to you. As soon as she took out the inescapable net, everyone's gazes immediately focused on her hand. Ju Xang cried out involuntarily, "It's the inescapable net. It's really the inescapable net." Ju Wu, who was standing on the side, chanted Buddha's name and muttered excitedly to himself, "Master, the sacred object is finally back." Disciple didn't become a sinner of Huayan Temple. Mo Chenga took another look at him. When Ju Wu said that, his gaze was directed at the sky as if he was talking to someone who had already passed away. Could it be that revered Avidya wasn't his master? This wasn't impossible. 40 years ago, Ju Wu was only a foundation-building cultivator, but he had a Buddhist sacred object in his possession. This was already unusual. If he really was revered Avidya's disciple, how could he and his junior martial brother have been driven out and reduced to the point of robbing passers-by? Presumably, this matter involved Huayan Temple's secrets. Seeing Mo Chenga taking out the treasure so straightforwardly, the smile on revered Avidya's face became even brighter. Buddhist light flashed on his right hand, and the inescapable net in Mo Chenga's hand flew up. In a flash, it was already in his hand. Revered Avidya spread the object and carefully felt it with both hands. It seemed like his eyes really couldn't see. After a while, he raised his head and said with a smile while holding the inescapable net, "Since little fellow Taoist is so straightforward, this old monk can't be too stingy. Whatever you want, don't hesitate to say it." What he said made Mo Chenga feel relieved. Although this revered Avidya was somewhat astute, in the end he was much more generous than those late nascent soul cultivators who used their power to oppress others. He didn't go back on what he just promised. She cupped her hands and said, "Junior wants to exchange some information from Senior." Revered Avidya's smile was quite meaningful. Although his eyes were closed, Mo Chenga felt a sharp gaze on her. "Little fellow Taoist, you said before that you wouldn't pry into my temple's internal affairs, right?" "Of course." Mo Chenga's gaze fell on the inescapable net in his hand. She said calmly, "What Junior wants to know doesn't have much to do with your temple." Revered Avidya was quite satisfied with her answer. He nodded and said, "That being the case, just say it." She thought for a while, then said slowly, "Junior once heard about the legend of the 5 saints in Yunzhong. Rumor has it that when the 5 saints passed away, they left behind 5 magic weapons, all of which were called holy objects. 2 of them were the Heavenly Devil Pagoda and the inescapable net. May I know what the other 3 are?" Revered Avidya paused for a while, then said, "This question indeed has nothing to do with my temple's internal affairs, so I can answer you. The other 3 holy objects of the 5 saints are Saint Guazian's soul-restricting bead, Master Zhou's nameless book, and Fuyazi's Fuxing sword." Mo Chenga took a deep breath then asked, "Rumor has it that these 5 holy objects can open the mysterious space in the Sea of Returning Ruins. Is that true?" Upon hearing this question, revered Avidya smiled slightly. "I can't answer this question accurately. I can only tell you that the 5 holy objects have other uses and are also related to the Sea of Returning Ruins. But whether they're used to open the mysterious space or for other uses, I don't know." After a pause, revered Avidya asked again, "Little fellow Taoist, do you have any other questions?" "No." Mo Chenga bowed respectfully. "Thank you for telling me, Senior." Revered Avidya smiled. He was about to say something, but in the next second, his smile disappeared and he looked up at the sky. At that moment, Mo Chenga heard a deep voice coming from the sky. "Old monk Avidya, why didn't you say hello when you came to my Guifang city?" Chapter 431. Mo Chenga raised her head and looked at the source of the voice. Before long, a group of people appeared out of nowhere in the sky filled with devil aura. "Late-stage nascent soul." Nye Wuxiang murmured, her eyes falling on the leading cultivator. If they weren't sure this person was in the late stage of nascent soul, They would never think he was Guifang City Lord, one of the three great devil monarchs of Yunzhong demonic path. This Guifang demonic monarch looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was thin, had a pale face and had a gentle bearing. There was no devil aura on his body, but he was elegant like a teacher in the secular world. However, his momentum was extremely strong, not weaker than that of Venerable Avidya. In Guifang City, who could have such momentum except for Guifang demonic monarch? Moreover, Mo Chenga saw Yang Qingji standing behind him at a glance. Fellow Taoist Guifang. The moment he noticed Guifang demonic monarch, Venerable Avidya had already put away the inescapable net. He put his palms together with a smile and said, "I'm just passing by. I have important things to do, so it's not convenient for me to meet you." Guifang demonic monarch's voice was a little hoarse, and he looked coldly at the Buddhist cultivators below. "Old monk Avidya, as Venerable Puji, it doesn't seem right for you to bring so many disciples into my Guifang city without greeting us, right?" The cities of the demonic path were different from the cities of the righteous path. Whether it was the state of Eastern Tang or the state of Southern Zhou, they all had their own royal families and prefectures. Even in a cultivation city like Sky Snow City, there were officials appointed by the imperial court to manage the mortals and take care of mundane affairs. Sky Snow City was under the influence of Ling clan, but nominally, anyone could come and go. However, Demonic Path City was built by the city lord and belonged to him. It had nothing to do with the royal family of Northern Chilan Nation. Therefore, Guifang City was actually Guifang demonic monarch's private territory. Venerable Avidya came to Guifang City, but he didn't greet Guifang demonic monarch and didn't go through the city gate. How could Guifang demonic monarch just let it go? However, Mo Chenga was very curious. No matter what, Guifang devil monarch was one of the three strongest devil monarchs, and Guifang City was also his private territory. Why did he only find out after revered Avidya brought his disciples into Guifang City? Could it be that revered Wu Ming had some secret technique that blocked the Ghost Square Demon Monarch's divine sense? However, a late Yuan cultivator was a late Yuan cultivator after all. Although he was a bit late, he still arrived before revered Avidya left. Venerable Wu Ming, on the other hand, was still smiling, and there was not even a hint of guilt on his face. "Fellow Taoist Guifang, why do you have to be so calculative? This old monk will leave with my disciple right now. How about it?" Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch said coldly, "Old monk, you have a good plan. You want to leave? Leave it here first." "Something?" Revered Wu Ming looked surprised. "Fellow Taoist Guifang, what are you talking about?" If she hadn't personally handed the inescapable net to Venerable Avidya just now, Mo Chenga would have thought he really didn't take anything. Such a benevolent-looking eminent monk actually acted like a scoundrel so naturally, it really made people speechless. Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's expression darkened. "Old monk Avidya, don't be so shameless. This is Guifang City, not your Baifu Mountain. This old monk may be old but his eyes aren't blurry. There's no need for fellow Taoist Guifang to remind me," revered Avidya answered with a smile. Seeing Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's darkened expression, Mo Chenga pulled Nye Wushang and cautiously retreated a few steps, hiding inside the cave. Fortunately, she already handed over the inescapable net. For Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch, they were basically insignificant characters. He didn't even spare them a glance. "It seems they'll most likely fight," Nye Wushang said softly as she looked outside with a bit of worry. And Mo Chenga carefully closed the cave's stone door, then quickly laid a bunch of restrictions around the cave. "Will it work?" Nye Wushang expressed her doubts upon seeing her actions. Late-stage nascent soul cultivators, if they fight they can raise the whole mountaintop to the ground. "They won't fight here," Mo Chenga said with certainty. "I'm just taking precautions." "All right." Nye Wushang nodded. This was Guifang City. How could Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch fight casually in his own territory? A battle between late nascent soul cultivators could possibly destroy an entire city. "Bald donkey." Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's gloomy voice rang out. "It seems you won't obediently hand over the thing if we don't fight." Revered Avidya's voice was still as calm as ever. "Fellow Taoist Guifang, this thing is our Buddhist sacred object. What's the use of it for you? If you give me face today, my Huayan temple will owe you a favor in the future. Isn't that good?" Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch said coldly, "You make it sound nice. The Heavenly Demon Tower is our Devil Path's sacred object, but didn't you Buddhist cultivators still come to snatch it?" Judging from his tone, Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch was extremely resentful. Could it be that the Buddhist cultivators played a part in his failure to snatch the heavenly demon tower this time? Fellow Taoist Guifeng. Revered Avidya dragged out his tone as if he was patiently persuading him. The matter regarding the heavenly demon tower was out of control in the end. We also had no choice. Now that it's over, it's useless to argue about it, isn't it? This old monk looks like an eminent monk, but how could he be so shameless? Nie Wuxiang said in a low voice. She could also be considered a devil path cultivator now, so she really couldn't stand revered Avidya's behavior. Mo Chinga smiled. That depends on who he's dealing with. He doesn't mind showing the demeanor of a senior expert to insignificant cultivators like us, but when he's dealing with cultivators in the same realm as him, if he takes a step back, he'll be giving away his own benefits. Nie Wuxiang nodded, then said with a sigh, even if the Buddhist commandments are stricter, they're still cultivators after all. In front of benefits they have to fight for it. Mo Chinga didn't say anything. Compared to other Taoists, the teachings of Buddhism were obviously gentler, but no matter how gentle it was, it had its limits. Revered Avidya didn't mind a junior like her negotiating conditions in front of him, and he was willing to give her some benefits. For him, she was still too insignificant. How could people haggle with ants? But in front of cultivators in the same realm as him, like Guifeng Demon Monarch, he wouldn't take half a step back. He couldn't give up something that a late-stage nascent soul cultivator fancied. If he retreated, he'd lose the benefits of himself and the entire Huayan temple behind him. Cut the crap. You snuck into my Guifeng city, so don't even think about leaving with that thing. Guifeng Demon Monarch was already impatient. When he said that, the two of them felt the spiritual aura pressure suddenly increase. Fortunately, Mo Chinga had laid a restriction before, so the spiritual aura pressure weakened a lot. Besides, Mo Chinga's soul refining art had been cultivated to a very high level, and Nie Wuxiang had strong primordial devil aura in her body, so they weren't affected. Fellow Taoist Guifeng, don't be so anxious. Isn't it bad to fight and kill for no reason? Both of us lost a lot in the Sea of Returning Ruins last time. It's time for us to recuperate. Why should we waste our energy? You make it sound so nice. Guifeng Demonic Monarch said angrily, you have obtained the sacred item of Buddhism, so you are naturally satisfied. If I allow you to sneak into my Guifeng city and take away a sacred item, how can I have the face to live in this world? Old ball donkey, I'll give you two choices. One, will have a good fight outside the city. If you win, you're free to come and go, and I won't say a word. If you lose, you'll leave the thing behind obediently, and you can still leave safely with your disciples. 2. I'll directly activate Guifeng City's Great Restriction and kill you and your disciples at the risk of destroying the city. What do you think? Choose one. In the end, Guifeng Demon Monarch's tone became gloomy. Obviously, he couldn't let this matter go. These two choices were very simple. Either one fight to decide the outcome or the other fight to the death. What Mo Chinga guessed was right. This was Guifeng City, so Guifeng Demon Monarch couldn't possibly not care about it at all, so he proposed the first solution. In this way, Guifeng City could be unscathed, and Venerable Avidya wouldn't be distracted by the safety of his disciples. However, whoever lost would lose the holy object, and they couldn't go back on their word. But if they chose the second solution, it would be a fight to the death. Guifeng Demon Monarch would bet Guifeng City, while Venerable Avidya would have to pay with his and his disciples' lives. At first glance, this solution seemed to make Guifeng Demon Monarch suffer more losses, but Guifeng City was a place he had been managing for 1,000 years. How could he let others come and go? Once he activated Guifeng City's Great Restriction, Venerable Avidya would most likely die no matter how powerful he was. Of course, with the great divine power of a late nascent soul cultivator, Guifeng City and all the cultivators in the city would disappear from the world. At that time, although Guifeng Demon Monarch survived and obtained the Buddhist holy object, his 1,000-year foundation would be destroyed in a day. Moreover, he was very likely to be seriously injured, and his cultivation level might be greatly damaged. In the end, he wouldn't have a good ending. It wasn't easy to cultivate to the nascent soul realm. Breaking through to the late stage of the nascent soul realm was even more rare among nascent soul cultivators. The higher the level of a cultivator, the more they cherished their lives. The first solution was the one that suited their interests. However, in addition to this, it also depended on Venerable Avidya's confidence and the importance of this Buddhist holy object. If Huayan Temple didn't hesitate to use the whole temple to retrieve this Buddhist holy object, then Venerable Avidya would have to fight Guifeng Demon Monarch even if he had to sacrifice the lives of himself and his disciples. Hey fellow Taoist Guifeng. Venerable Avidya's voice sounded very helpless. Do you have to leave no way out? Umph. No need to talk nonsense, just choose. After that, there was no more conversation. Mo Chinga and Ye Wuxiang felt the spiritual aura pressure getting stronger and stronger. In the end, it was so strong that the two of them felt uncomfortable. From time to time, the sound of other disciples coughing up blood because they couldn't bear the spiritual aura pressure came from outside. Since fellow Taoist Guifeng is determined, this old monk won't say much. Please go ahead. This time Venerable Avidya's voice became solemn and deep. Both Mo Chinga and Ye Wuxiang's hearts skipped a beat. Could it be that Venerable Avidya chose the second solution? If that was the case, hiding in this immortal's cave would mean certain death. Before they could communicate, they heard Guifeng Demon Monarch's voice. Old monk, it seems you have some sense of responsibility. Let's go. Right after he finished speaking, one of the auras instantly went far away. The two of them heaved sighs of relief. It seemed Venerable Avidya chose the first solution. The crisis in front of them finally had nothing to do with them. Soon after, the auras at the entrance left one by one. Finally there was no one left. Mo Chinga and Ye Wuxiang looked at each other. Both of them heaved long sighs of relief. This was really an unexpected disaster. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.